They thought their money was safe, but there are eyes everywhere watching your every move at the bank, waiting for you to slip up.
Say scammers have figured out how to take over your phone number, giving them access to all kinds of things.
Cell phones, credit cards, ATMs, even the biggest banks are at risk. This year, it's not a question of if the scam will happen, it's whether you'll catch it before everything's gone. Scammers move faster than fraud alerts. They disguise themselves with a smile and attack with precision. And once it starts, it's often already too late.
There were 11 wire transfers in total, 2 on our personal accounts, 9 on our business accounts. We lost close to $140,000.
There is a special place in hell for the people that can do this to someone.
This resurfaced mail scam uses QR codes to potentially drain your bank accounts. And it goes by this weird name called the brushing scam.
The brushing scam.
Brushing scam.
Brushing scam.
Somebody out there has my contact information and just arbitrarily sends me these things. I feel like it's an invasion of my privacy.
We were concerned then that someone had an ulterior motive and they were using our address for some sort of possible criminal activity.
So if we really don't want this stuff and we really want it to stop.
Anybody could fall for this, from a 20-year-old to a 90-year-old.
And here's the worst part. If you ignore it, you might think you're safe, but your personal information is already in the hands of scammers. Plus, the Better Business Bureau and the Federal Trade Commission labeled this scam as a nationwide threat. So I'm gonna show you why scammers just started sending diamond rings as bait, how a simple mystery package can spiral into full-blown identity theft, and why if you get a fake package at all, then scammers already have a disturbing amount of info on you. You won't believe how easy it is for scammers to steal your personal info until you see how the scam actually works. Oh, and before I forget, I just created a free checklist to help you lock down your identity and stop scammers. This checklist gives you quick steps with clickable links to secure your accounts, block payday loans, protect your tax records, and a lot more than that. Plus, I included over 10 agencies where you can report scams like this. There's no hoops to jump through, just click the link below to get instant access for free. Now, think about it like this. What if you're home, finally getting some time to yourself? Maybe you're catching up on your favorite Netflix series or you're scrolling through your Instagram feed. Then you hear knock, knock, knock. You're not expecting anyone. No delivery schedule, no online shopping spree, at least not one you remember. Then you open the door and there it is, a package with your name on it. And you think, that's weird, but curiosity wins. You bring it inside and tear it open. Inside, you find random stuff, maybe a Bluetooth speaker, some cheap kids' toys, or even women's makeup. Then you spot the note inside. Scan the QR code to find out who sent this surprise gift or leave a review. At first, it seems harmless, right? Maybe your friend sent you something, a giveaway win you forgot about. But here's the truth. This is not a random act of kindness. This could be the first step in a scam that exposes your personal data and puts your financial security at risk. Law enforcement calls this a brushing scam. And a brushing scam is when scammers send unsolicited packages to random people to fake sales and reviews on online marketplaces like Amazon, eBay, or Walmart. The idea is to make their product look more popular and trustworthy than it actually is. They use real names and addresses to create fake verified purchases and then leave glowing 5-star reviews. The more sales and positive reviews a product gets, the higher it ranks on platforms like Amazon, making it more visible to real shoppers. And most of the time, these are newer or shady sellers trying to achieve verified merchant status quickly. The items in these scams are usually cheap, unbranded, and random. Like I said before, you might receive lipstick or nail polish, small toys, pet food, tech accessories like phone chargers or Bluetooth earbuds. And at first glance, it doesn't seem like a big deal. Hey, free stuff, right? But this is where it gets dangerous because your personal information is already in scammers' hands if they have your name and address. Where did they get it? Was it from a past data breach, a shady online seller? And it can lead to bigger scams. Some victims have reported that after receiving that unsolicited package, they became targets of hacking attempts, like Raquel from Miami, whose Apple account was nearly compromised from Brazil shortly after ignoring a brushing scam. And you could be unknowingly helping scammers sell bad products. These fake reviews trick real customers into buying poor quality or counterfeit items. And here's the thing, you don't even have to open the package or scan a QR code to be involved. Your name, your address, your online presence are already being used in a scam you never signed up for. Scammers have found a new way to bait victims, this time with jewelry. Just look at Melissa from Wake County. She wasn't expecting a package, but one arrived anyway. Inside was a shiny, expensive-looking ring, no note, no receipt, and no recognizable sender. Now, at first, she was confused. Did someone send her a gift? Did she win something? Something felt off to her. A few days later, another package arrived. Same size, same ring, same mystery. This time, she checked the return address. It listed the name Cody Polk, a name she'd never heard before. Then she thought, maybe it's just a mix-up. Maybe Cody Polk was the real recipient and the packages were being sent to the wrong person. But something about this just didn't feel right to her. Determined to solve the mystery, Melissa searched Cody Polk on Facebook. That's when things got weird. As soon as she started typing, Cody Polk ring popped up as a suggested search. She leaned back and thought, wait, what? And then she clicked through and she found post after post from people who had received the exact same ring, also from Cody Polk. This wasn't just a mistake, it was happening to multiple people. Now her confusion was quickly turning into alarm. Inside the package, along with the ring, was a warranty card with a simple instruction. Scan the QR code to activate your lifetime warranty. And you might think that's harmless, right? But Melissa almost did it. After all, who wouldn't want to secure a warranty for what appeared to be a valuable piece of jewelry? But by now, her instincts were screaming at her, do not scan. Melissa then decided to dig deeper. She tried emailing the company listed on the package. All of her emails bounced back as undeliverable. Then she checked the return address. It led to a strip mall with no actual business matching the sender's name. And that's when she knew. This wasn't a gift. It was a scam. And Melissa was lucky she never scanned that QR code, but she worried about the others who might. Because here's the thing, scammers prey on trust and curiosity. Who doesn't love a free gift? Who wouldn't want to protect their valuable jewelry? But that's exactly how they get you. Then Melissa went to social media to warn others before they got caught in the same trap, because the next person might not be as skeptical as her. And I just want to warn you guys, QR codes are not safe. These QR codes are everywhere, and most of the time they're totally safe. But what happens when one isn't? What if that harmless looking black and white square is actually a trap? But first, let's clear up something that a lot of people get wrong. Scanning a QR code does not instantly drain your bank account. What's dangerous is what happens after you scan it. When you scan a QR code, your phone automatically opens a web page or performs an action. That means if a scammer sneaks in a fake QR code, they can redirect you to a fake website that looks identical to Amazon or PayPal or your bank or even your email login page. And if you're not paying attention, that's when you enter your username, your password, or banking details, thinking it's legit, and then boom, you're just handed over all your info to scammers. And here's a few sneaky ways that scammers actually exploit those QR codes. They can use phishing attacks. That's when you scan a malicious QR code and that can take you to a fake website designed to steal your Amazon or banking or email login credentials. It might look exactly like your real bank's website, but in reality, it's controlled by the hackers. They might get you to install malware. Some QR codes can trigger an automatic file download that installs spyware or malware on your phone. And these programs can record your keystrokes, steal your saved passwords, and even monitor your screen activity. And they can even initiate fake payment requests. Some malicious QR codes autofill payment details, tricking you into sending money to a scammer instead of a real business. This happens a lot in parking meters and fake event tickets and fraudulent store promotions. And like I said, not all QR codes are bad, but here's how to spot the sketchy ones. If it's from an unknown or unexpected source, it's going to be a scam. If it claims to reveal a mystery sender or a special offer, likely a scam. If the URL looks slightly off, then it's probably a scam. And you got to know, at first, getting a random package in the mail might seem like nothing more than an odd mistake or even a little surprise. But what most people don't realize is that this innocent looking delivery could set off a chain reaction that leads to one of the most dangerous cyber attacks out there, a SIM swap. So a brushing scam isn't just about boosting fake reviews, it's about collecting real personal information too. Once scammers confirm your name, address, and possibly your phone number, they can then use that data to target you for a SIM swap attack. And that involves taking over your mobile number and then locking you out of your most important accounts. And a SIM swap attack is when scammers take over your phone number by tricking your mobile carrier into transferring it to a new SIM card that they control. What they do is that they call your mobile carrier pretending to be you, then they claim their phone is lost or stolen and need a replacement SIM card. If the carrier doesn't ask for strong verification, then they approve the transfer. Then your phone suddenly loses service and all your calls and texts now go to the scammer's phone. And this is so dangerous because they intercept all your two-factor authentication codes, the ones sent via text for banking and email logins. That's when they reset your passwords, locking you out of all your accounts. And then they can drain your bank accounts via wire transfers and then take over your email and even access crypto wallets or social media accounts. And just imagine waking up and your phone says no service and you have no texts, no calls. Meanwhile, scammers are logging into your accounts, stealing your money, and then cutting you off from everything. These scammers are getting smarter, but the good news is you can stay one step ahead of them. These scams only work if you take the bait. So let's break down exactly how to protect yourself and make sure your personal data stays yours. First, just never scan random QR codes. QR codes are convenient, but they can also be digital booby traps. Scammers love using these because they look harmless, but one scan could send you straight to a phishing site or install malware on your device. And again, here's how they trick you. They embed those malicious QR codes in the unsolicited packages or emails or flyers. The links look almost real, like paypal-login.com instead of paypal.com. And you got to notice that there's an extra L in that web address. They also prey on curiosity with messages like, click here to claim your prize. If you didn't enter a contest, there's no prize to claim. And if you didn't request a package or a flyer, you want to be skeptical. Also, here's a pro tip. If a QR code is legit, you should be able to manually type in the website it links to. If a company is legit, it won't force you to scan anything. Another thing you want to do is report unsolicited packages. The second that you receive a package you never ordered, take it as a red flag, not a freebie. You'll want to report that package to Amazon customer service. They'll know how to handle it. You also want to report it to the Better Business Bureau scammer tracker site. I also created a full list of over 10 agencies where you can report these scams to. Just remember to hit the link below to get free access to my identity theft prevention checklist. And the next thing you want to do is strengthen all of your passwords now. If you've already received a random package like this, that means your info is already in the wrong hands. Scammers don't stop at your name and address. They dig deeper. That's why it's time to lock things down. Use strong, unique passwords for every account. No more password 123 or using the same login for everything. And you want to enable two-factor authentication on your most important accounts, preferably with an authenticator app like Authy. And you know, a lot of people have been asking me which bank accounts have app-based two-factor authentication. And that's when I find out that the vast majority of banks don't have this security feature. But my primary personal account with SoFi does. I've been with them for over 5 years, and right now they're offering up to a $325 bonus when you set up direct deposit. It's a limited time deal, so you don't want to miss out. You can check them out in the links below. And you'll definitely want to consider using a password manager to generate and store complex passwords. I also think it's very important to stop buying from these one-item, one-off sales pages. One of the sneakiest ways scammers get your info is by running sketchy one-product sales pages online. You know, the ones where you see an ad for a hot deal, but the website looks a little off? And I mention this because many people who received those fake rings and those brushing scams from earlier had previously ordered a completely different product from a scam website. The site never shipped them their original order, but kept their name, address, and payment details. Later on, they received a random package, and that was the fake ring. That's a clear sign that their info had been sold or leaked. If a website has no clear return policy, no customer reviews, and no real company info, don't buy from them. Another thing you can do is monitor your accounts for unusual activity. It's really shocking to me how few people actually check their accounts regularly. Many fraud victims don't realize something is wrong until it's far too late. So you'll want to check your bank and credit card statements weekly for unexpected charges, even small ones. Scammers often start with these small transactions to test your account first. And you'll want to set up alerts for new login attempts or password resets or unusual spending. You can also use a credit monitoring service to watch out for identity theft or new accounts open in your name. Scammers really rely on victims not paying attention. If you're regularly checking your accounts, you can catch that fraud before it gets worse. But let's face it, scams like this are showing up everywhere these days. In fact, I recently covered a shocking case where Chase Bank allowed more than 100 complete strangers to become authorized users on customers' credit cards without their knowledge. It's a wild story, but more importantly, I'll show you how to spot this kind of fraud before fake cards start arriving at your front door. This sneaky ATM scam can drain your bank accounts in seconds.
Why is my account almost $1,000 less?
That happened to me.
That guy scammed me last night at the ATM machine.
I didn't think anything of it. I thought he was just using the ATM.
My initial reaction was, wait a second. I definitely did not withdraw that much money.
Investigator from Chase just made me feel so icky.
I tried so hard to get that money back.
And according to the FTC, people reported losing $10 billion to scams in 2023. That's like every person in America having $30 snatched from their wallet by criminals. If you don't know how to move in these streets, every ATM visit could be like leaving your wallet in a gas station bathroom. So I'll show you how 3 innocent people use an ATM to move a few bucks around, only to have a scammer drain their entire weekly paycheck. How one victim caught the scammer in the act, recorded the proof, and still had his claim denied by Chase. And if you get hit, the 7 battle-tested steps that can force your bank to cough up every stolen dollar. Oh, and before I forget, I put together a free checklist to help you lock down your identity and keep scammers out for good. It's super easy to follow and packed with quick steps with clickable links to secure your accounts, block payday loan fraud, protect your tax records, and even more. Plus, I even included over 10 agencies where you can report scams just like this. And I just created another freebie to help you remove yourself from data broker lists so those shady companies stop selling your personal info. Just click the link down below to grab both for free. Now, let's talk about how Joey lost $1,600. Joey wasn't expecting to lose his hard-earned money that day. He was just stopping by the ATM like he had done countless times before. But in a matter of minutes, he would unknowingly walk into a painful scam, one that nearly drained his entire account and left him fighting for weeks to get his money back. Joey pulled up, ready to withdraw some cash, but something wasn't right. The card reader wouldn't work. He tried inserting his card again, but nothing happened. That's when a helpful stranger standing nearby leaned in. They said something like, "Oh yeah, man, that's what happens a lot with this machine. You gotta tap to pay on your card. Just use that, it works every time." Joey hesitated for a second. He had never really used the tap feature at an ATM before, but this guy seemed to know what he was talking about. And besides, he was in a rush. So he tapped his phone, entered his PIN, took his cash, and then walked off, completely unaware that his session was still open. Now, hours later, Joey checked his bank account, and that's when panic set in. There were 6 withdrawals that he never made. $1,640 was gone. His stomach dropped. He scrolled through his transaction history over and over, hoping it was some mistake. But the numbers did not change. That's when he remembered the stranger at the ATM. He was set up. So Joey wasted no time. He immediately called Chase's fraud department, explaining his money had been stolen. But instead of getting the help he expected, he was met with resistance and disbelief. Chase's response was something like, "Sir, you tapped your phone to make the withdrawal, so it must have been you. You didn't report your phone missing, so there's no way someone else used it. They said, we reviewed your case, and unfortunately, we won't be refunding your money." Joey couldn't believe what he was hearing. How could they just dismiss it like that? He pleaded with them to check the ATM security footage, proof that he had left before the extra withdrawals happened. But Chase shut him down again. They said, "We can't pull the footage unless law enforcement requests it." Now, Joey wasn't about to let Chase brush this off, so he went back to the same ATM several times, hoping to spot something suspicious. And sure enough, after a few visits, there he was, the exact same helpful stranger who had told him to use tap to pay. They were standing right there at that same ATM, watching, waiting. Joey quickly pulled out his phone and started recording. He captured clear video footage of the scammer lingering near the machine, waiting for new victims. Now, armed with that new footage, Joey rushed back to Chase, confident that they would finally take his case seriously. But their response was another slap in the face. They said, "How do we know this was from the day that you were scammed? How do we know this wasn't just from some random guy at the ATM?" They basically said, "We're sorry, but we still won't be refunding your money." At this point, Joey was outraged. He took his case to the local news station. He shared his footage, his story, and how Chase refused to help him even with clear evidence. And then suddenly, things changed. After the media picked up the story and started asking Chase questions, the bank reopened Joey's fraud case. This time, they did what they should have done the first time. They reviewed the transactions and then refunded the stolen funds. And then there's Pamela, who lost almost $1,000. Pamela was just trying to withdraw some cash, $40 to be exact, from her local Chase Bank ATM. But what should have been a simple transaction turned into a nightmare, leaving her nearly $1,000 poorer and forcing her into a battle with her own bank to get her money back. Pamela approached the ATM on the right side of the machine, like she always does, ready to insert her debit card like usual. But when she slid the card in, nothing happened. No beep, no processing, just silence. Confused, she tried again, but still nothing. That's when she heard a voice beside her. A man waiting in line leaned in just slightly, not too close, just enough to seem helpful, but not pushy. They said something like, "Oh yeah, that's what happens all the time with these machines. You have one of those chip cards, right? Just tap it." Pamela hesitated for a second. She wasn't in the habit of using tap features at ATMs, but it was her bank, so she figured it would be fine. She tapped her card, and it worked. She entered her PIN, withdrew her $40, thanked the man for his advice, and then walked away. She had no idea she was handing over access to her entire account. Now that night, Pamela went about her usual routine, completely unaware that her account was still vulnerable. Then the next morning, she casually opened her Chase banking app, something that she did every so often just to keep an eye on things. And that's when she saw it. 3 more ATM withdrawals, each one draining more and more from her account. A total of $960 was gone. Her heart started to race. She frantically clicked into details, double checking the timestamps. The withdrawals happened after she had already left the ATM. The helpful man wasn't just another customer, he was a scammer. Pamela immediately called Chase to report the fraud. She explained everything: the broken ATM card slot, the stranger's advice, the suspicious withdrawals that followed. She expected concern, she expected help instead of what she got, which was denial. They said, "We reviewed your claim, and unfortunately, since the transaction was completed using your card and PIN, it's considered authorized." She thought, wait, what? Pamela was stunned. She didn't authorize those withdrawals. She had already walked away from the machine when it happened. Now Pamela wasn't just fighting the scammer, she was fighting her own bank. Now Chase may have closed her case, but Pamela wasn't backing down. She filed several more fraud claims. Each time the answer was the same: "We're sorry, but the transactions were authorized." Now she was exhausted, but she refused to give up. She kept pushing, calling Chase again and again, refusing to accept their canned responses. And then finally, after multiple escalations and relentless pressure, Chase reversed their decision and refunded her money. She got the $960 back in her account. Now, it turns out this isn't just a Chase problem. I found a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau complaint from a few weeks ago about a Wells Fargo customer who was scammed out of $1,000 in almost the same way. It was a busy afternoon at a Wells Fargo branch in Pennsylvania. The bank was unusually crowded, and a group of people lingered near the entrance. Now, since the CFPB complaints are confidential, we'll call him Tim, just an ordinary guy trying to run a quick errand. He made his way to the ATM outside, ready to deposit a check using the tap to pay debit card. But again, something wasn't right. The ATM wouldn't accept the deposit. Maybe it was full. Maybe it was malfunctioning. Frustrated but in a hurry, Tim walked away from the machine and went inside the bank to complete the deposit at the counter. He didn't realize it yet, but he had just made a huge mistake. Now inside, he stood in line waiting for his turn. A nagging feeling stuck with him. There were too many people around, and one person in particular seemed to be watching him closely. He was saying, was it paranoia or was it something actually off? A few minutes passed. The check was successfully deposited. It wasn't until he glanced at his phone 20 to 30 minutes later that he noticed the email notification from Wells Fargo. $1,000 had just been withdrawn from his account. He was thinking, how was this possible? He hadn't taken out any cash. His mind raced back to the ATM outside. Had he forgotten to close out his session? Then it clicked. Someone had been waiting for him to leave that ATM. A scammer must have jumped onto the ATM the moment he walked away, taking advantage of his still active session. With a few quick taps, they had drained $1,000 before disappearing into the crowd. Now, with his heart pounding, Tim immediately called into Wells Fargo to report the fraud. The bank's response was fast, but not in the way he expected. They said, "Your case has been closed. We determined that the withdrawal was authorized." Authorized? How could it be authorized? He hadn't touched the ATM after his failed deposit attempt. Now Tim was desperate. He called again, pleading for a real investigation. And the response was the same. Wells Fargo refused to refund the money. Instead, he was told to consider the case closed. But for Tim, the fight isn't over since he filed a complaint with the CFPB. But for now, he's left with an empty account. And I gotta say, we have a new administration in office who's trying to gut and eliminate federal agencies.
Oversight fundamentally flawed.
Arguably the most unaccountable agency in the history of the U.S. federal government.
It might be harder than ever for people like Tim to hold these banks accountable by using the CFPB. Now, I call this scam the super glue scam, and it's super simple and shockingly effective. Because by the time you crank up your car, the scammer is already long gone with your money. Here's exactly how they pull it off. First, scammers target an ATM in a busy area, one where people don't linger for too long. They block the ATM card slot by filling it with super glue or some other adhesive, making it impossible to insert your card. This forces customers into plan B, which is using tap to pay. At this point, you might just assume the ATM is malfunctioning, but in reality, it's working just fine. The scammer just made sure you have no choice but to use tap features. Then there's the helpful stranger act. Here's where social engineering comes into play. A scammer posing as just another customer is conveniently nearby. They act friendly, casual, but not pushy, just helpful enough to seem trustworthy and not raise suspicion. That's when they suggest to tap your card instead of inserting it, knowing that most people don't question the advice from someone who seems like they're trying to help. And this is really psychology at work. If someone appears knowledgeable and confident, we tend to follow their lead, even in situations where we'd normally be cautious. Once you tap your card, the transaction seems to go through just fine. You withdraw your money, thank the stranger, and then walk away feeling relieved that your problem was solved. But what you don't realize is that your session is still open, and that's where the real danger begins. Now, the moment you leave the ATM, the scammer moves into place. Here's what they already have: your PIN number. They either saw you enter it in person, or worse, they planted a hidden camera nearby to record it. Then they have an active ATM session. The machine never actually asked you to reinsert your card, so as far as the system is concerned, your session is still open. And they also have an easy way to empty your account. With just a few steps, a scammer selects yes to make another transaction, this time withdrawing as much money as the ATM will allow. By the time you realize what happened, they've already drained your account. And you should know every bank has slightly different rules, but most follow a general structure when it comes to ATM withdrawal limits. It's usually $3,000 at ATMs located inside a bank lobby, or those accessible after hours, including ATMs inside a branch, but available 24/7, and then $500 at non-network ATMs. Now, even though scammers can't usually drain your entire account in one go, losing $500 to $1,000 in minutes would ruin just about anyone's day. That's rent money. And a car payment or a week's worth of groceries wiped out in seconds. And I'd say for most people, discovering fraudulent ATM withdrawals would trigger a straightforward process. Report the fraud, get your money back, case closed. But for the victims of the super glue scam, that wasn't the case at all. Instead of support and protection, they got denials, accusations, and frustration. One victim even reported that a Chase representative outright insulted them, suggesting that they may have been the one that stole the money themselves.
Oh, how do we know you didn't steal it? Why would I steal my own money?
And this isn't just like a denial, it's a slap in the face. So Chase and other banks claim they weren't responsible for these fraudulent withdrawals. But why? Well, they say that the withdrawal happened under the victim's ATM sessions. The scam works by keeping the session open, so as far as the bank system is concerned, the same user was making multiple withdrawals. And banks treat PIN entry as proof of authorization. So since the victim entered their PIN initially, Chase assumed every transaction after that was legit. So in Chase's eyes, there's no fraud at all, just customers changing their minds and taking out more cash. But here's the issue. They refused to check the security footage. They ignored multiple reports from different victims, all at the same ATM. They automatically denied claims without properly investigating. So instead of protecting their customers, Chase's first instinct was to protect their bottom line. So let's talk about how to protect yourself from this ATM scam. Scammers are getting smarter and banks aren't always quick to help. That means your best defense is you. If you don't want to end up in a battle with your bank over stolen money, you need to stay one step ahead of the scam. Now, here's how to avoid getting caught in the super glue trap. You want to avoid using any ATM if the card slot is jammed or broken. If your card won't slide in, do not proceed with the transaction. And any malfunction with an ATM should be treated as a potential tampering attempt. You want to find another ATM, preferably inside the bank or another secure location. In this instance, scammers are really counting on you to take the easy way out, to assume it's just a minor issue and then switch over to tap to pay. And then you always want to close out of your session completely. When the ATM asks, would you like to do something else? Select no. Then you want to wait until the screen returns back to the main menu. Don't just assume the session ended. And also you want to double check your transaction history after using an ATM. If something looks off, call your bank immediately. I hate that I have to say this, but you want to be wary of strangers at the ATMs. If you ever notice someone just standing around or near an ATM, not using it, just kind of hovering, it's not normal. If someone is loitering near the ATM, they could be waiting to trick or target someone. And don't take ATM advice from strangers. If someone is quick to offer a solution, you want to be suspicious. And you definitely don't let anyone physically touch you and your debit card and tap it for you. That should go without saying, but scammers rely on catching people off guard like this. That's actually what happened to one victim, by the way. Now, if you did become a victim of this ATM glue scam, time is everything when dealing with this fraud. The longer you wait, the harder it gets to recover your money. Step 1, you want to check your account for unauthorized transactions. So log into your bank's mobile app or website and check your transaction history. Take screenshots of any fraudulent transactions. These are going to be critical evidence when you're filing disputes. You also want to note the time and location of the unauthorized withdrawals. Then 2, you want to contact your bank immediately. And here's what you want to say when you call. You want to report the fraudulent withdrawals and insist that your ATM session was hijacked. Then you want to request that the bank freeze your debit card immediately to prevent further withdrawals. Then you want to ask for a fraud claim number and write down the rep's name. And also you want to request a review of the ATM security footage. This can be crucial evidence proving that you weren't at the machine for those extra withdrawals. And I also go a little further and demand a written confirmation that your fraud claim is being investigated. And unfortunately, most victims of this super glue scam were denied refunds at first. Now, if this happens to you, just don't take no for an answer. So for step 3, request a written explanation of the denial if you get denied. Banks are legally required to conduct a reasonable fraud investigation. If they deny your claim, demand a written explanation for it. These banks have to provide clear documentation explaining why they believe the transaction was authorized. Now, I believe that many banks are automatically denying fraud claims as a first response, hoping that you'll give up and then move on. So a written response forces them to justify their reasoning, which may expose flaws in their investigation. And step 4, you want to file a police report. A police report creates an official fraud case, adding credibility to your claim. Some banks even require a police report before reopening a denied fraud case. So if the scammer has targeted multiple victims at the same ATM, your report may help law enforcement build a case. And when you talk to the police, you want to report the ATM location, the date, the time, and the fraudulent withdrawals. Also mention any suspicious individuals or helpful strangers you remember near the ATM. And you want to send them screenshots of your bank transactions and your denied fraud claim. Moving on to step 5, you want to contact your state banking regulator. So just so you know, banks are regulated by state financial institutions and every state has a complaint process. So you want to find your state's banking authority, then submit a formal fraud complaint detailing your whole case and your bank's refusal to help. You'll attach those screenshots and transactions and all the other fraud claims in the police report too. And this works because banks hate dealing with government regulators. If your bank ignored your case, a state inquiry may force them to take action. Now for step 6, file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB. The CFPB is a federal watchdog that oversees banks and investigates consumer fraud complaints. You can do this whole process online too, by the way. Now, a really cool part about the CFPB is that it requires the bank to respond within 15 days. And banks don't want regulators digging into their fraud handling policies. This could pressure them into reversing their decision. If your bank still refuses to help you, it's time to go public with it. Step 7, you want to expose the scam and make noise. Many victims only got their money back after news outlets investigated Chase's fraud denials. What you can do is Google your city name plus news on your side to find consumer advocacy reporters. A lot of these local news stations have a fraud or scam alert division that investigate cases like yours. And the media loves fraud cases where banks refuse to help customers. They may pressure your bank into reversing that decision. And listen, banks absolutely hate bad press. A single viral story can force them into refunding dozens of victims. And other victims may have come forward, proving this is a larger issue too. Just like in these cases from earlier, many banks miraculously review the denied fraud claims after media outlets contact them. But I wish I could say this was the only scam you need to watch out for. Unfortunately, that's just not true. Scammers are out here working overtime, coming up with new ways to drain people's bank accounts every single month. That's exactly why I put a whole playlist together for you with all the biggest bank scams you need to know about. We're talking sneaky phone scams, shady credit card tricks, and even scams that banks don't want to warn you about. There's a sneaky debit card scam that's draining hundreds of bank accounts.
There are a lot of people out there who would love to separate you from your money.
I was left with $1.84.
Well, that is really disturbing. I really have thought a lot about the idea that somebody had my information.
It irritates me that somebody's just trying to get the easy way out and stealing from people.
Obviously, it makes you concerned for what's coming next, and I'm probably going to have to get another new card. And then 6 months, I'll get another new card, and who knows, it'll be an endless game of cat and mouse.
Scammers are getting smarter, bolder, and more ruthless, finding new ways to steal your info. And the numbers don't lie. Debit cards are now prime target. Just take a look at the latest data from the FICO scoring company. Debit card fraud nearly doubled in just 1 year, a 96% increase in compromised cards. In 2023 alone, over 315,000 debit cards were compromised, up from 161,000 in 2022. That's like an entire city waking up to find their bank accounts wiped out. Even bank ATMs aren't safe anymore. Skimming incidents at bank ATMs shot up 90% that year. And just when you thought new debit cards with the chip in it made you safer, scammers found a new way to sneak past security and drain your bank accounts. It's called shimming or super skimming, and it's completely invisible. If you've ever inserted your card in an ATM or gas station pump, you could have already been targeted. So up next, you'll see why shimmers are nearly impossible to spot, making them even more dangerous than the old school skimmers, how a single scam operation can drain hundreds of accounts before getting caught, and the only guaranteed way to completely avoid a shimming attack. Oh, and before I forget, I put together a free checklist to help you lock down your identity and keep scammers out for good. It's super easy to follow and packed with quick steps with clickable links to secure your accounts, block payday loan fraud, protect your tax records, and even more. Plus, I even included 10 agencies where you can report scams just like this. And I also just created another freebie to help you remove yourself from data broker lists so those shady companies stop selling your personal info. Just click the link below to grab those both for free. Now let's talk about Elaine's ATM visit that cost her $1,000. Elaine did everything right. She checked her statements, used familiar ATMs, and trusted that her chip-enabled card would protect her. But scammers are getting smarter, and now they don't even need to steal your physical card to drain your bank account. If it happened to her, it could happen to you. The scariest part is you won't see it coming until your money is already gone. One afternoon, Elaine stopped at an ATM in Washington State, a machine she had used dozens of times before. Nothing seemed unusual. She inserted her chip-enabled debit card, withdrew cash, and went on about her day. She had no idea that at that very moment, a paper-thin shimmer hidden inside the machine was silently copying her card data. A few days later, Elaine sat down to check her bank balance, and that's when a panic set in. $1,000 was missing. Transactions she didn't recognize had drained her account. She called up her bank immediately, convinced there had been some sort of mistake. But what the bank told her next sent chills down her spine. They said something like, "Ma'am, we believe your card data was stolen using an ATM shimmer." So Elaine had fallen victim to one of the hardest to detect financial scams out there, called shimming. The worst part, her card had never left her hands. And obviously, Elaine felt violated, angry, and helpless. When she went back to her credit union, she was met with even more bad news. They told Elaine she wasn't the only victim. Hundreds of other customers had reported similar fraud cases over that past few weeks. It took days of investigation before the bank finally figured out the scammers had installed shimmers in 3 locations in different parts of town. Every customer who was affected got an automatic refund though. And to prevent this from happening again, the bank upgraded its fraud detection systems to flag unusual ATM withdrawals faster, block suspicious transactions before they go through, and they're working with the ATM manufacturer to retrofit those old ATMs with new protections. And then there's the story of Neil. He had $280 stolen from his account. Neil never thought twice about using an ATM. He had done it 100 times over before without any issue. But one quick stop at a convenience store ATM in Chandler, Arizona would change the way he looked at banking forever. He inserted his chip card, withdrew his cash, and went on his way. No strange errors, no suspicious machines, no red flags. What he didn't know though was that his card had just been cloned. So a few hours later, Neil checked his bank app, expecting to see the usual balance. Instead, his stomach dropped. It said $280 was missing, plus a random $3 ATM fee from a machine he'd never used before. Confused, he did what any of us would do. He grabbed his wallet, pulled out his card, and stared at it. It was still there. His card had never left his sight, yet somehow someone had used it to withdraw his money. That's when it hit him. He had been scammed. Frustrated and determined to warn others, William took to Facebook, posting a detailed warning for his neighbors. He got a hold of the video footage and he said they would use a card, pull a balance inquiry to see how much money was in that account, and then they would use that card again, use a pin and pull money out, pocket the cash or put it in a purse, depending on which one was doing it, and then they'd move on to the next card. And just like Elaine, Neil wasn't alone. Chandler police said they were getting at least a dozen reports a day about this exact type of fraud. There's no official confirmation on whether Neil got his money back, but I guess he did, mainly because the story wasn't focused on a battle with his bank to recover his money, unlike so many other stories tend to be. And after being scammed, Neil learned his lesson and immediately switched over to using credit cards instead of debit, knowing that credit cards offer better fraud protection than bank accounts. Scammers are getting smarter, faster, and harder to catch. But if you know how they operate, you can stay one step ahead and keep your bank account safe. So here's how they pull off the scam. Step 1, the setup, planning the shimmer. The first step is deceptively simple. A scammer walks up to an ATM or gas station pump just like any regular customer, but instead of withdrawing cash, they're installing that shimmer. That's a razor-thin device so small it slides right into the card reader without anyone noticing. And unlike bulky skimmers that attach to the outside of the machine, a shimmer is invisible to the naked eye. You most likely won't feel it, you won't see it, and even banks may not realize their machines have been compromised until countless customers report fraud. Then step 2, the victims insert their card and the shimmer goes to work. When Elaine inserted her chip-enabled debit card, everything seemed normal. There was no error message, there was no sticky buttons, no sketchy looking attachments, nothing. But the moment her card slid in, the shimmer sprang into action, capturing all the critical data stored on her chip. She withdrew her cash and then went on about her day and had no clue she had just been scammed. This is really what makes shimming so dangerous. There are no red flags. Unlike those traditional old skimmers that target magnetic stripe cards, shimmers steal data from the chip cards, tricking people into thinking they're safer just because they are using a more secure technology. Now, step 3, they clone the card, turning stolen data into cash. So once the shimmer has captured the victim's chip data, the scammers waste no time putting it to use. They use a machine called a card encoder. They clone that stolen data onto a blank magnetic stripe card, often called a white plastic card in the fraud world. Now, this fake card won't work for chip-based transactions, but here's the loophole. Many ATMs and retailers still allow swipe transactions, especially for international transactions or older machines that haven't been upgraded. This is exactly how Neil's money was stolen. Even though he never lost possession of his card, someone used a cloned version of it to withdraw hundreds of dollars from an ATM he had never been to. And then step 4, the cash grab, draining of the accounts in minutes. And scammers know that banks are getting better at detecting fraud with AI, so they have to move fast. Once they've cloned the victim's card, they hit multiple ATMs back to back, making as many withdrawals as possible before the bank catches on. And they don't just stop at just one victim either. If they planted a shimmer in a high traffic ATM, they could be collecting dozens, if not hundreds of card details in a single day. And by the time the bank flags suspicious activity, it's too late. The scammers have already disappeared, cash in hand. Now, if Elaine's story taught us anything, it's that scammers are always one step ahead, but that doesn't mean that you have to be an easy target. Shimming is sneaky, but there are simple ways to protect yourself. By making a few smart choices, you can avoid becoming the next victim of this nearly invisible scam. And here's how. You'll want to avoid ATMs and gas stations in unsecured locations. Based on FICO reports, over 35% of skimming attacks happen at ATMs, but not all ATMs are created equal. If you're grabbing cash at a random gas station in the middle of nowhere, you're taking a much bigger risk than you even realize. So use ATMs inside a bank, an airport, or a grocery store. These locations have security cameras and are monitored regularly. You also want to avoid standalone ATMs at gas stations, convenience stores, or even dark alleys for sure. Scammers love these spots because they can install a shimmer in seconds without anyone noticing. And here's a pro tip. If you must use a gas station pump, choose one closest to the cashier or in direct view of security cameras. Scammers prefer pumps further away from the store. You also want to check for signs of tampering before using an ATM. If something feels off, trust your gut. Scammers rely on people being in a rush and not paying attention. But if you take just 5 extra seconds to check, you could save yourself from a major headache. You'll want to check for tight or sticky card slots. So if you're inserting your card and it feels harder than usual, stop right there. Shimmers sit inside the reader, making the slot a little bit tighter than normal. You also want to check for hidden cameras. Scammers don't just use your card info, they also need your PIN number. They often place a tiny little little pinhole camera right above the keypad or attach fake mirrors to capture your keystrokes. So what you want to do is cover your keypad with your hand every time you enter your PIN. Even if there's no camera, this habit can protect you from future scams. You want to set up real-time alerts for transactions. So the sooner you know about fraud, the faster that you can stop it. Banks won't always catch suspicious transactions, so it was up to you to be your own watchdog. So definitely enable mobile alerts for every single transaction, even the small ones. Some scammers start with tiny purchases to test if the card is active before draining your account. And plus, you're going to get notified immediately when money leaves your account, and if you didn't make that transaction, you can freeze your card on the spot. And I know I just talked about this recently, but another thing you can do is use tap to pay instead of inserting your card. This is really the only guaranteed way to avoid shimming. And that's because tap to pay doesn't require your card to go into a reader at all. Apple Pay, Google Pay, and Samsung Pay are completely immune to skimming and shimming because they use encrypted tokens instead of your actual card number. Tap to pay cards are contactless credit card and debit cards, don't store or share your card number. So even if a scammer hacked the payment terminal, there's nothing for them to steal. And if there's one smart move Neil made, it was using a credit card instead of a debit card after he learned his lesson. And that's because when scammers get a hold of your debit card, they're tapping directly into your bank account. That's when your actual money is at risk. And recovering stolen funds from a debit card fraud case can take weeks or even months in some cases. And you may not even get all your money back. Credit cards really give you an extra layer of protection. Unlike debit cards, they don't pull money directly from your bank accounts. And most major credit card issuers offer zero liability protection, meaning that you won't be responsible for unauthorized charges at all. Plus, disputing fraudulent transactions is easier. If you report fraud on a credit card, the issuer typically investigates and removes the charge quickly, while banks often require more proof before refunding money from a debit card. And here's a big one too, your checking account stays safe. So even if scammers get your credit card details, they can't drain your bank account or mess with your bill payments or rent or groceries. And I can only imagine waking up to find mystery charges on your account is enough to send anyone into panic mode. But what you want to do is take a deep breath. If you act fast, you can stop the damage and get your money back. Because the good news, unlike other banking scams where victims struggle to recover their funds, banks usually reimburse shimming fraud fairly quickly. But the key is reporting it as soon as possible before scammers drain even more money. So here's exactly what to do the moment you realize that you've been shimmed. Obviously, you got to report unauthorized transactions immediately, because the sooner you report the fraud, the better your chances of getting refunded. Banks have fraud teams that monitor suspicious activity, but they don't always catch it in time. So you want to call your bank's fraud department immediately and dispute every fraudulent charge. And many banks will refund the stolen funds within a few days, but some may require an investigation. You also want to file a complaint with authorities. Most people don't even realize this, but banks aren't the only ones who investigate fraud. You can report shimming scams to several government agencies. And the more people who report it, the better chance law enforcement has of tracking down those criminals. So you want to report shimming fraud to the Federal Trade Commission or FTC, and that's because the FTC tracks nationwide scam trends and shares data with law enforcement agencies. Then you want to go to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center or IC3. The FBI investigates organized cybercrime, including ATM fraud rings. If your fraud involves a large amount of money or multiple victims, also report it to your local police department. While police don't always investigate individual cases, they can compile reports to find patterns and work with federal agencies. But I wish I could say this was the only scam that you need to watch out for. Unfortunately, that's just not true. Scammers are out here working overtime, coming up with new ways to drain people's accounts every single month. That's exactly why I put together a whole playlist with all the biggest bank scams you need to know about. We're talking sneaky phone scams, shady credit card tricks, and even scams that banks don't want to warn you about. This Chase Bank impostor scam drains your accounts in minutes.
All the money that you had in there is gone, and you actually owe Chase $895. My world fell apart. My whole world fell apart.
Jennifer Davis says she lost $25,000.
I was horrified. I was devastated.
Checked her bank accounts and found her savings account nearly empty.
So there were 11 wire transfers in total, 2 on our personal accounts, 9 on our business accounts. We lost close to $140,000.
There is a special place in hell for the people that can do this to someone.
According to the FTC, people reported losing $10 billion to scams in 2023, and the number one type of scam was an imposter scam. If you don't know what to watch out for, scammers can trick you into handing over your entire life savings without even realizing it. Across the country, victims are responding to what they think is legitimate fraud alert, only to find out too late that the real fraud was the text itself. Soon, you'll see why banks like Chase won't get your money back even when they know it's a scam. The 5 psychological hacks scammers use to fool even the smartest people, and the one thing you can do to easily avoid ever becoming a victim of a scam like this. Oh, and before I forget, I just created a free checklist to help you lock down your identity and stop scammers. This checklist gives you quick steps with clickable links to secure your accounts. You can block payday loans, protect your tax records, and a lot more. Plus, I just included over 10 agencies where you can report scams like this. There's no hoops to jump through, just click the link below to get it for free. Now, the first couple had $137,000 stolen from their personal and their business accounts. It was just another day when Scott's phone buzzed with a fraud alert from Chase Bank. The message warned him of a $4,500 wire transfer attempt, asking if he had authorized it. Now, at first glance, everything looked up and up, completely normal. The text merged seamlessly into his existing Chase thread, just like every other fraud alert he had received before. No suspicious numbers, no sketchy formatting, just a simple urgent question. The question was, did you approve this transaction? And Scott was cautious. He didn't immediately click anything or respond to the text. Instead, he did what any savvy business owner would do. He checked with his business partners, and none of them had authorized the wire. Then he called his local Chase branch just to be safe. The branch representative reassured him there's no sign of any wire transfer on your account. He was relieved but cautious. Scott asked what to do next. The bank representative gave him the number for the official Chase fraud department and advised him to call immediately. He had no idea that at this moment, the scam was already in motion. Just as Scott was about to call the Chase fraud department, another text popped up on his screen. It said a Chase fraud specialist will contact you shortly regarding your account security. Before he could even process it, 30 seconds later, his phone rang, and the caller ID said Chase Bank. It was the exact same number listed on the back of his debit card and the same number the bank representative had given him just a few minutes ago. A calm, professional voice greeted him. They said, "Hello, Scott. This is the Chase fraud department. We're seeing unusual wire transfer activity on your account, and we need to act quickly to protect your funds." Now, his heart was still racing from the earlier text, but hearing those words from a seemingly real Chase employee put him at ease. This fraud specialist read off his exact account details, confirming his recent transactions, even ones he had just made that morning. Scott let out a relieved sigh. This was real. Chase had his back. Or so he thought. That professionalism of a real bank representative, that specialist who ran through a security protocol that felt entirely legit, they never asked for his password. They knew his account details. They acted as if they were protecting his funds, not stealing them. And the so-called specialist even warned him that he's being targeted by scammers. They said, "We need your help to secure your account before they drain your funds." Scott was all ears at that point. He was ready to do whatever they told him. Then came the most critical moment of the scam. "We're going to send you a verification code to confirm your identity." That's what the specialist explained. "This will allow us to lock down your account and prevent unauthorized transfers." Seconds later, Scott received a text from Chase Bank's real number. It was a genuine 2-factor authentication code, the kind that Chase sends when customers log in or authorize high-risk transactions. The specialist then said, "Please read the code back to me so we can verify your identity." And Scott complied, not knowing that this was the final key the scammers needed. The moment Scott read the numbers out loud, the fraud specialist, which actually was the scammer, immediately authorized wire transfers from his account. They took 11 transfers from his personal account and then 9 more from his business account. In just minutes, nearly $137,000 was gone. All of a sudden, doubt started to creep in. Everything had happened so fast. Scott barely had time to process the situation before the call dropped unexpectedly. And something felt off. He quickly dialed the real Chase fraud department, this time using the number printed on his bank statement. A representative picked up, and they said, "Sir, we don't have any fraud cases open on your account." Scott's stomach dropped. He realized he had just handed over his life savings to a scammer. So the fraud alerts were fake. The texts were fake. The Chase fraud specialists, they were fake too. But the money transfers, those were 100% real. And worst of all, he had authorized them all himself. Panicked, Scott raced to his local Chase branch to report the fraud in person. But the response was brutally fast and cold. They said, "Sir, transfers are final. Once the money is sent, we can't get it back for you." They opened a fraud case, but Scott could already hear the defeat in their voices. The manager explained banks have 60 to 90 days to respond, and if the money was wired from American banks to banks overseas, the money is likely gone forever. After that, for 11 days, Scott waited for Chase to assign a case manager. And when they finally did, their conclusion was exactly what he feared. The claim was denied, the transactions were authorized by him, and there was nothing they could do. And you know, I have to tell you about the tragic story of Deborah Moss, who had spent over a decade building her savings up, finally ready to enjoy a slower life in rural California. But just weeks after moving in, a fraud alert text from Chase asked if she had approved a $35 charge from another state. The message looked real again, merging into her existing Chase text thread, and she quickly replied no. Then seconds later, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Chase Bank, and the woman on the line, Miss Barbara from Chase ATM Services, sounded calm and professional. She assured Deborah that Chase had blocked the charge and offered to send her a new debit card. But first, she needed to verify her identity. This Miss Barbara sent a real Chase verification code and asked Deborah to read it back. What Deborah didn't know was that the code was authorizing a wire transfer out of her account. And over the next few days, Ms. Barbara called multiple times, claiming issues with the card delivery and requesting more verification codes. Each time, Deborah read them back, unknowingly authorizing 6 wire transfers, some as high as $48,000. And by the time Deborah visited a Chase branch in person, it was too late. Her entire $160K life savings was gone. She actually owed Chase $895. Chase later denied her fraud claim, stating that she had not taken the appropriate steps to protect her account. Because she read back the transaction codes, Chase classified the transactions as authorized, leaving her with nothing. And then there's the story of Jennifer Davis, who had spent years saving for her first home, carefully putting away stacking $45,000. Then, in a single phone call, her dream was stolen. It started with a text from Chase Bank asking for her to confirm 3 unauthorized wire transfers. Alarmed, she immediately replied no. Again, seconds later, her phone rang. The caller ID matched Chase's real fraud department number, and the person on the line sounded professional and reassuring. They told her Chase was securing her account, but needed her to read back a verification code that had just been sent to her phone. The text was real, straight from Chase. But the code wasn't for security. It was for authorizing a wire transfer out of her account. Then, days later, Jennifer logged in and saw the balance. Her $38,000 in savings was down to just 18 cents. 2 fraudulent wire transfers wiped out over $25,000. Expecting Chase to help, she called the real fraud department, but instead, they denied her claim outright. They said the transactions look clean and appear to be authorized by you. So what Chase was basically saying is that we don't believe you. Because she had read back the codes, Chase blamed her for the loss, refusing to reimburse her stolen money. And Jennifer wasn't just devastated by the loss of her savings, she was betrayed by the very bank she trusted to protect it. So if it wasn't clear, this is how this scam works in 5 steps. Step 1, they fake the fraud alert. A text arrives claiming to be from your bank, asking if you authorized a suspicious charge or wire transfer. It looks 100% real because it merges into your existing bank messages. Then step 2, the immediate call from the bank. Within seconds, your phone rings from your bank's real number, but it's spoofed. They act as a calm professional fraud investigator, telling you they are here to secure your account. Then step 3, the scammer asks to verify your account. They say they need to confirm your identity to stop the fraud and will send you a security code via text. Then step 4, the victim has to give their real authentication codes that arrive from the real bank, and they have to read it back, unknowingly authorizing that wire transfer. And step 5, the money vanishes. Days later, you check your account and your money is gone. When you end up calling your real bank, they tell you the transfers are authorized and your claim is denied. And I want you to remember, while Chase is frequently reported in these scams, no bank is immune. Scammers use the same tactics to target customers across all major banks. Now, you might think at this point that I never fall for a scam like this. But here's the truth. Even the most cautious, financially savvy people have been tricked. And why is that? It's because these scams don't feel like scams. They feel real. Scammers don't just deceive you. They create an entire experience that mirrors how real banks operate. They're not guessing. They've studied the process. They know exactly how to manipulate you. And they know how to do that because the scams always start with a real sense of urgency. Imagine starting your day as usual, coffee in hand, phone buzzing with emails, when suddenly you receive a fraud alert from your bank. It'll be something like Chase Bank alert. Did you authorize a $4,500 wire transfer? Reply yes or no to confirm. And then your heart jumps. What? I've never made a wire transfer. you're going to instinctively react. You're going to immediately reply no. You're going to feel a sense of panic because someone is trying to drain your account right now. And before you even have time to think, your phone is going to ring. This urgency bypasses rational thinking. The scammer doesn't give you a chance to pause and evaluate the situation. Instead, they create a crisis that demands your immediate action. And then the caller ID and SMS spoofing makes the fake text appear in a real bank thread for you. Scammers know that you won't trust a random number. That's why they make their messages appear inside the real banking thread. Your bank's name shows up as the sender. The text merges into your existing conversation with Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America, and it looks just like the legitimate alerts you've received before. So when you see the fraud alert inside of your real bank message history, you don't question it. And this works because people assume if it's in my bank's message thread, it must be legit. But it's not. And then you barely have time to process the fraud alert before your phone rings. The caller ID says it's your bank. The timing is flawless, exactly what you'd expect from a real fraud department too. They use banking lingo that sounds official. They assure you that they're here to help you. They speak with confidence like this is just another routine fraud case for them. And this works because victims expect a follow-up call from their bank. The seamless transition from text to phone call builds instant credibility. You think, wow, Chase is really on top of things. But the real Chase never called you. And then the scripts are identical to the bank's fraud department. Scammers don't just sound professional, they follow the exact script that a real fraud investigator would use. They say things like, you're on a recorded line, and for verification purposes, can you confirm the last 4 digits of your account? And they also say, we're seeing suspicious transactions on your account. We need to act fast. It's like word for word what you expect from a real bank employee. And Scott, one of the victims, said, everything they said, you're on a recorded line, here's who we are, here's what we see, here's what we need, was identical to what I've experienced with my actual bank's fraud team. And this works because familiarity breeds trust. Victims don't question the legitimacy because this is exactly how the real banks handle fraud. And then scammers already have some of your real banking details. One of the biggest shocks for scam victims is how much the scammers already know about them. They'll casually mention details like your real bank balance or something close to it. They'll mention a recent transaction you actually made. They'll say partial account numbers. They'll say like, I see you made a purchase at Target for $76. Is that correct? How do they know this? Well, they may have purchased leaked banking information from data breaches. They might have accessed partial details from phishing scams. In some cases, your computer or your phone may have been compromised with malware. And this obviously works because victims think if they have this much info, they must be my bank. And that's really the final piece that convinces people to comply. Now, if you ever wondered why Chase and other big banks fight so hard against refunding scam victims, the answer is pretty simple. They don't have to. Victims assume that because their money was stolen, the bank is going to step in, investigate, and make things right. But instead, they get hit with a cold reality. Banks aren't legally required to refund wire transfer fraud. If someone steals your credit card and makes fraudulent purchases, federal law requires the bank to reimburse you. If someone hacks your debit card and then drains your account, you're protected under the Electronic Fund Transfer Act. But with wire transfers, those are treated completely differently. Under the Fund Transfer Act, banks are not required to reimburse victims of wire fraud, even if they were tricked into making the transfer. So Chase and other institutions exploit this loophole to deny fraud claims and avoid taking financial losses. They argue that if the customer approved the wire transfer, even under deception, it was an authorized transaction. So once the money is sent, it's gone, and Chase has zero obligation to get it back. That's exactly why a lawyer from the National Consumer Law Center argued if banks knew they were on the hook for these losses, they'd have a stronger fraud protection in place. So since banks aren't rushing to protect you, you have to protect yourself. And here's how. You never want to respond to uninvited urgent requests. If you get a text or call or email claiming there's a problem with your bank account, stop and verify before doing anything. Scammers like to create panic to push you into reacting fast. Always, always, always verify directly with your bank. Hang up and call the bank's official number from their website. Never trust phone numbers provided in suspicious messages. They're fake. And to prevent scammers from accessing your accounts, even if they steal your passwords, use app-based authenticators like Google Authenticator or Authy instead of SMS codes. And unfortunately, some banks like Chase only use SMS-based authentication, which is easier to exploit. And then you want to make sure that you set up bank alerts for transactions so you can get real-time notifications for withdrawals and wire transfers. Some banks even let you require phone confirmation before large transactions go through. But here's what you can do if you were actually a victim of a scam like this. Even if your bank refuses to help you, you still have a few options. You'll want to immediately contact your bank and then request a wire recall. Though the chances are slim, acting fast is your best shot. Then you want to freeze your accounts and change all your login passwords immediately. Then you want to go and report that to the authorities. Even if the bank won't reimburse you, filing reports helps track scammers down and then push for policy changes. You can report the scam to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center and then the Federal Trade Commission as well. Most victims don't even know these resources exist because banks and government agencies do a terrible job at notifying the public that they can help you. Even though the system is stacked against you, reporting scams creates a paper trail, and the more reports they get, the harder it is for banks to ignore the problem. But let's face it, scams like this are showing up everywhere these days. In fact, I recently covered a shocking case where Chase Bank allowed more than 100 complete strangers to become authorized users on customers' accounts without their knowledge. It was a wild story. But more importantly, I'll show you how to spot this kind of fraud before fake cards start arriving at your front door. This new SIM swap scam uses your cell phone number to drain all of your bank accounts. One victim said, "They didn't just take my money, they took my trust and everything I thought was secure." If you don't take steps to protect your accounts, you could wake up to find your savings wiped out, your identity stolen, and your peace of mind shattered. SIM swap scams are no longer rare, they're growing, and they're hitting new people from California all the way to Maryland.
SIM swapping. SIM swapping.
SIM swapping.
Soon, you'll see how one victim lost $38,000 overnight after scammers hijacked his phone number, how dangerously simple the scam is to pull off, and the 5 steps you can use to protect yourself from becoming their next target. Now, what if you woke up one morning and realized your phone wasn't working? You know, no calls, no texts, just a small SOS signal in the corner where your cell bars used to be. For Justin Chan, who was a resident of Carlsbad, California, this wasn't a random technical issue. It was the start of a complete nightmare. It began with some strange notifications. Passwords for his accounts were being changed one after the other. Before Justin could act, his phone stopped working altogether. He said, "I couldn't make any calls in or out." He initially thought it was a temporary network issue, but the truth was far worse. Scammers had hijacked his phone number by convincing his carrier, Xfinity Mobile, to transfer his number to their device. This was a calculated attack. Now, with his phone number in their hands, the scammers gained access to Justin's financial accounts. They intercepted 2-factor authentication codes, which are reset passwords, and initiated wire transfers, all without Justin being able to intervene. Over the course of a single night, they drained $38,000 from his Bank of America accounts. What's more chilling is how easily the scammers bypassed security measures. Justin later discovered that Xfinity Mobile required only the last 4 digits of his credit card to authorize the SIM swap. Why would they think that was enough verification? Justin asked, in a complete panic. When Justin realized what had happened, he acted immediately. He contacted Bank of America to report the fraudulent transactions, expecting fast action. Instead, he was met with resistance. The bank claimed that transactions had been confirmed via SMS, even though the scammers controlled his phone. To add insult to injury, Bank of America initially refused to reimburse him, stating the transfers were valid. He said, "It was just as bad as the criminals taking my money." He felt powerless, facing not just the scammers, but also a corporate giant unwilling to take responsibility. Frustrated but determined, Justin turned to the media. His story was picked up by local news outlets, and the public outcry was quick. The added scrutiny forced Bank of America to reopen his case, and after further investigation, the bank finally reimbursed Justin for his losses, but only after a ton of pressure. That's why it's important to stick up for yourself when large corporations fail to protect you. He said, "If I hadn't gone to the media, I don't think they would have done anything." SIM swap scams are becoming an epidemic with devastating financial consequences for victims across the country. Let me walk you through some of the most shocking cases. First, in Alabama, a small business owner banking with Regions Bank had $172,000 stolen. Scammers hijacked the victim's phone, accessed banking codes, and drained the account. Despite the FBI stepping in, the majority of the stolen funds were never recovered. Next, in Chatsworth, California, a man lost $21,000 when his phone service was disrupted. The scammers bypassed 2-factor authentication, proving that even with extra security measures, these criminals can still get through. And over in Bethesda, Maryland, a woman with strong passwords and 2-factor authentication enabled still fell victim to SIM swaps. Scammers gained control of her phone and accounts, ultimately stealing $17,000. And lastly, lastly, in Campbell, California, another resident faced even greater losses, $46,000. Scammers convinced her phone carrier to transfer her service to a new SIM, giving them full control over her financial accounts. And these cases show just how widespread and devastating SIM swap scams have become. No matter how secure you think your accounts are, the sophistication of these attacks is making everyone vulnerable. And just so you know, a SIM swap scam is a type of fraud where scammers hijack your phone number by convincing your mobile carrier to transfer it to a new SIM card, and that's one that they control. Once they have your number, they're not just playing with your ability to make calls, they're using it as a master key to unlock your financial life. So in just a few steps, they can gain access to your most private accounts. And these SIM swap scams are alarmingly simple, yet incredibly effective. Here's how they work. First, there's the impersonation game. Scammers contact your phone carrier pretending to be you. They'll use charm, urgency, or even emotional sob stories, saying things like, "I lost my phone and I need my number transferred to a new SIM card immediately." Shockingly, this simple tactic works far too often with certain companies. Next comes minimal information, maximum damage. Here's the scary part. Scammers don't even need much to convince carriers. A few personal details like the last 4 digits of your social security number or a credit card number are often enough. They gather this information from data breaches, phishing emails, or even what you've shared online. It's frightening how easily this could happen to anyone. Then they just cut you off. Once the carrier transfers your number to their SIM card, your phone goes completely dark. No texts, no calls, and no way to recover access. The scammers want you locked out while they raid your accounts. Finally, they start breaking in. With control of your phone number, they can reset passwords on your financial and online accounts, intercept 2-factor authentication codes sent via SMS. They can take full control of your bank accounts, email, social media, and even crypto wallets. And in just minutes, they can drain your savings, steal your identity, and leave you scrambling to recover. What makes SIM swap scams particularly devastating is their efficiency. They don't need access to your physical phone or extensive hacking skills. Just a few personal details and a call to your carrier, and they're in. The worst part is many victims don't realize what's happening until it's too late. By the time they notice their phone isn't working, scammers have often already accessed their accounts and drained their funds. Now, recognizing the warning signs of a SIM swap scam early can save you from devastating losses. Here's how to spot them and what to do if you suspect you're a target. First, watch for loss of cell service. If your phone suddenly can't make calls or send texts or connect to data and you see SOS instead of signal bars, this is a major red flag. Your phone line may have been hijacked at that point. Next, pay attention to unusual notifications. You might start receiving alerts about password changes you didn't make or notifications for new devices logging into your accounts. These can seem minor at first, but they're often the digital equivalent of someone rummaging through your wallet. For instance, one victim reported receiving a flood of password reset emails right before realizing their phone had lost service. Another red flag is being locked out of your accounts. If you suddenly can't log into your email, bank, or social media, even though your passwords are correct, it likely means the scammers have already accessed your accounts and changed those credentials. Finally, check for unexplained financial activity. If you notice unusual transactions or missing funds, the scam is already in progress. By this point, the scammers are likely transferring money, maxing out credit cards, or even applying for loans in your name. Now, if you notice any of these warning signs, don't panic, but act fast. Time is critical in stopping a SIM swap scam before it causes irreparable damage. First, contact your phone carrier immediately. Call your carrier's custom support line and ask if any changes have been made to your account, such as a SIM swap scam or phone number transfer. Insist on locking your account with a PIN or password if you haven't already. Next, notify your bank and other financial institutions. Contact your bank, credit card providers, and any other financial platforms you use. Inform them of the situation and request a freeze in your accounts to prevent unauthorized transactions. Many banks have fraud hotlines for emergencies like this, so you want to use those. Then change your passwords. Update your passwords for all accounts, especially for your email and bank accounts. Strong and unique passwords are key to regaining control. Also, check for unauthorized activity. Review recent transactions on your bank accounts and credit cards. If anything looks suspicious, report it immediately. Don't forget smaller accounts like PayPal or Venmo, as these are often overlooked but still targeted by scammers. Finally, you want to file reports. Report the incident to the FBI's IC3 Internet Crime Complaint Center for cyber crimes and notify your local police department for documentation. These reports can be crucial if you need to dispute fraudulent transactions later. By staying alert and acting quickly, you can minimize the damage and protect your finances. And the numbers behind SIM swap scams are truly terrifying, and they're only getting worse. Back in 2018, there were just 320 reported cases of SIM swap scams in the US, but by 2021, that number had skyrocketed to over 1,600 cases in a single year. That's a 5-fold increase. The financial impact has been just as alarming. Between 2018 and 2020, total reported losses were $12 million, but in 2021 alone, scammers stole a staggering $68 million. That's more than 5 times the losses from the previous 3 years combined. Now fast forward to 2023, and these scams showed no signs of slowing down. By the end of that year, victims have reported losing over $50 million to SIM swaps. The growing sophistication of scammers combined with weak security measures means no one is truly safe. And as digital banking and online transactions become the norm, the stakes will only get higher. And we live in a world where one careless moment can cost you everything: your money, your identity, and even your peace of mind. But there is good news. With a few simple steps, you can protect yourself. It's not just about playing defense, it's about staying one step ahead of the scammers. First, you'll want to secure your phone and your financial accounts. Start by setting up phone account security. Call your mobile carrier today and ask to add a PIN or password to your account. Without this, scammers only need a few pieces of personal information to convince your carrier to hand over your phone number. Many carriers now offer alerts for suspicious activity. Sign up for those notifications and ask about advanced security features like biometric verification or account locks to make unauthorized changes nearly impossible. Next, upgrade to app-based two-factor authentication, or 2FA for short. If you're still using SMS-based 2FA, switch to safer options like Google Authenticator or Authy. These apps don't rely on your phone number, making them much harder for scammers to exploit. Also, enable activity alerts for all of your accounts. I'm talking banking, email, and even social media. Real-time notifications can give you a head start if someone tries to tamper with your accounts. And the best part, these alerts work even if scammers gain access to your accounts, as long as you're still connected to the Wi-Fi. Second, protect your finances. You want to diversify your accounts. Scammers love a single packed bank account. Spread your money across multiple accounts so if one gets hit, you still have a backup. Plus, having relationships with multiple banks gives you more options when you're ready to apply for personal or business credit. It also protects you if one bank freezes or shuts down your account without warning. Remember the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. That applies here. And you'll want to be skeptical of unverified messages. You ever get a text or email saying your account has been compromised, and then it says click here to fix it? Scammers rely on fear to make you act without thinking. Always verify these messages by contacting the company directly through their official website or customer service number. If it feels off, trust your gut. Also, if you want to go the extra mile, you need to invest in identity theft protection. I've been using Aura for 2 years, and it's my go-to for protecting what matters most to me. And here's why. It gives you instant alerts, so if someone tries to hijack your identity or access your accounts, you know right away, giving you the time to act fast. You also get all-in-one protection, so Aura combines credit monitoring, password management, and antivirus in one single platform, so you don't have to juggle between tools. Plus, there's advanced monitoring, so you can scan your social security number, phone numbers, and bank accounts. That means Aura can catch trouble before it becomes a bigger issue. And if something does go wrong, you're covered with 24/7 US-based support. So you have access to real experts who are ready to help you anytime, day or night. And Aura gives you data breach notifications. So if your information is exposed in a data breach, Aura lets you know and guides you step by step to secure those accounts. And here's the best part. Aura's app-based alerts will work even if scammers steal your bank info, as long as you're connected to Wi-Fi. And you can try it risk-free with a 14-day free trial. Just hit the link below to get started. With these steps, you're not just defending yourself, you're taking control and staying one step ahead of the scammers. And let's face it, scams like this are showing up everywhere these days. In fact, I recently covered a shocking case where Chase Bank allowed more than 100 complete strangers to become authorized users on customers' credit cards without their knowledge. It's such a wild story, but more importantly, I'll show you how to spot this kind of fraud before fake cards start arriving at your front door. There's a new phone number scam where scammers are hijacking phone numbers, intercepting your personal codes, and draining your bank accounts. And the phone carriers won't tell you this, but they can easily make one change to put a stop to this madness. This is absolutely mind-blowing. Did you know that with carriers like Verizon, some SIM swap attacks are actually inside jobs? And even when it's obvious the carrier is at fault, you can't even sue them. Also, they bury clauses deep in their terms of service to deny all responsibility. Yeah, it's that bad. And here's how it works. Scammers don't need your phone, they just need your number. Through a SIM swap scam, fraudsters convince your phone carrier to transfer your phone number to a SIM card that they control. Now, once they hijack your phone number, they're not just stopping you from making calls, they're breaking into your bank accounts too. In 2023 alone, victims have reported over $50 million in losses. The combination of weak security measures and increasingly sophisticated scams has created the perfect storm, and as digital banking and online transactions continue to rise, so does the risk for everyone. And picture waking up to a notification that your phone number has been deactivated, only to discover that scammers have taken control of it through a SIM swap. Minutes later, you find out your bank account has been drained completely, or your cryptocurrency wallet has been emptied. You turn to your phone carrier for answers. After all, they allowed the switch in the first place, and then you're met with their cold legal response. We are not responsible for your losses. If you've ever read the fine print of your carrier's terms of service, and let's be honest, most of us haven't, this might not come as a surprise to you, but it should. These agreements often include clauses that shift the financial responsibility of fraud directly onto you, the customer, even when carriers' own failure enabled the scam in the first place. And Verizon's terms of service explicitly limit their liability to direct damages only, meaning they won't pay you for consequential, indirect, or special damages. That includes the money stolen from your bank account or your cryptocurrency accounts after a SIM swap scam. Worse yet, they flat out deny responsibility for unauthorized access to your account, even if their own systems or employees fail to protect your data. Now let that sink in. Verizon can fail to secure your account, enabling fraud, and then wash their hands of the financial fallout. Your life savings could be wiped out. Your life response boiled down to, not our problem. And then AT&T's terms take it a step further, stating customers are responsible for all activity on their accounts, even unauthorized activity. They make it abundantly clear there is no security or protection guarantee against unauthorized access to your AT&T services. This essentially shifts the entire burden of fraud prevention onto you, the customer. And think about it. You pay AT&T every single month expecting reliable service and protection, but their own terms free them of any responsibility to secure your account. Whether it's a weak authentication process or human error on their end or an inside job, none of it matters. They're not taking any blame. And then T-Mobile's terms are strikingly similar to Verizon's. They state, to the extent permitted by law, you and we agree to limit claims for damages or other monetary relief against each other to direct and actual damages, regardless of the theory of liability. They go on to clarify that these disallowed damages include, but are not limited to, damages arising out of unauthorized access or changes to your account. Now, the translation to that, T-Mobile only covers direct and actual damages. If a scammer empties your bank account after a SIM swap, you're on your own. What's more, even when T-Mobile's own failures like poor employee training or outdated security protocols enable these scams, their terms try to shield themselves from accountability. Across Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, the story is the same. These companies create terms of service that prioritize their bottom line over your security. Victims of SIM swap scams are left with little to no legal recourse, even when the carriers fail to implement basic safeguards. For many victims, the financial fallout is really devastating. Bank accounts can be drained, life savings can be lost, and crypto holdings wiped out in minutes. With no accountability on the part of the carrier, victims are forced to bear the full burden of these losses, at least in theory. Now, we'll get into how this actually plays out in arbitration a little bit later. But carriers shouldn't be allowed to hide behind legal jargon and try to avoid responsibility for fraud caused by their own negligence. And you should know that carriers like Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile have a simple feature called a SIM lock or account pin that can block unauthorized SIM swaps. But here's the catch. It's not enabled by default. Instead, they expect you to do your own research and lock it yourself. Many people don't even know SIM locks exist. It's not something carriers advertise in bold letters when you sign up for your service. They'll gladly send you texts about new upgrades or discounts, but have you ever received a notification saying secure your account with a SIM lock to prevent fraud? Probably not. Without a SIM lock, scammers can contact your carrier, impersonate you, and then request a SIM swap to take over your phone number. From there, they can intercept your two-factor authentication codes, access your bank accounts, and then drain those accounts, and even lock you out of your email and social media accounts. For some of you, that might be even more scary. But for many victims, the first time they hear about SIM lock is after they've already been scammed. By then, it's too late. their phone stops working, and they quickly discover their accounts have been compromised. Imagine the frustration of learning that a simple feature could have prevented this, but no one told you about it. This isn't just an oversight, I think it's negligence. Carriers know SIM locks are effective at stopping fraud, yet they fail to aggressively communicate this option to their customers. Worse, by not enabling it by default, they leave millions of accounts unnecessarily vulnerable. This inaction shifts the entire burden of account security onto you, the consumer. Instead of carriers taking responsibility for protecting your account with aggressive measures, they essentially say, we gave you the tools, it's your fault for not using them. The truth is, most people don't take extra steps to secure their accounts unless they're prompted or required to do so. This isn't laziness, it's just human nature. We assume that if something is important to us, the company providing the service will handle it. And listen, default settings are powerful. They create a baseline of protection for everyone, even those who aren't tech savvy or don't understand the risks. Think about it. If SIM locks were enabled by default, scammers would immediately face a barrier when trying to initiate unauthorized SIM swaps. Customers who wanted to unlock their SIM for account changes could still do so, but the default would ensure that their account was secure until they actively chose otherwise. This single change could significantly reduce the number of SIM swap scams, saving customers untold financial losses and stress. Now, after thinking about it, I think carriers might argue that enabling SIM locks by default creates friction for users. They worry it might inconvenience customers who need to swap SIM cards or make account changes. But let's be honest, how often does the average person change their SIM card? Is a minor inconvenience really worth leaving millions of people exposed to fraud? The reality is that carriers prioritize user convenience over user security. And while that may seem reasonable in theory, it's a dangerous trade-off when the stakes are just this high. Moving on, when we think of SIM swap scams, we often picture shadowy hackers working tirelessly to crack systems. But the truth is far more troubling and closer to home. These scams are frequently enabled by insider fraud within major carriers like T-Mobile and Verizon, AT&T, where employees themselves or the systems that they access become the weak link in the chain. New reports have shown that scammers are actively contacting T-Mobile and Verizon employees and offering them $300 or more to perform a SIM swap. The employees, whether underpaid or simply unaware of the devastating consequences, accept the bribes. With just a few keystrokes, the scammers gain control of a victim's phone number and then start draining their accounts. Right now, scammers are deliberately targeting carrier employees, exploiting their access to internal tools to bypass security protocols. In some cases, scammers don't even approach employees directly. They're using leaked employee directories to find and contact their targets, making the scheme even more destructive. And faced with growing reports of insider fraud, carriers have responded, but it's not enough. T-Mobile acknowledges the problem, emphasizing that their systems haven't been breached. But while they investigate employees involved in illegal activity, victims are left wondering why better safeguards weren't already in place. The company has promised to enhance security by requiring customers to confirm SIM swaps via SMS or in-store visits. While this is a step in the right direction by acknowledging it, it doesn't address the root issue, employee access and training. And then Verizon has pledged to work with law enforcement and improve cybersecurity measures. However, systemic changes like reducing employee access to sensitive tools seem slow to arrive. And then the problem doesn't even end there with carrier employees. Authorized resellers or third-party retailers that handle customer accounts are also vulnerable to exploitation. Scammers have successfully targeted employees at these resellers with phishing schemes, tricking them into logging into fake portals with stolen credentials. Once they get those stolen credentials, scammers then gain full access to internal systems. Once inside, scammers use tools like Verizon's Omni customer support platform to execute unauthorized SIM swaps. These tools designed for legitimate account management become weapons in the hands of criminals. And authorized resellers often operate with weaker security protocols than carrier-owned stores, making them easy targets for scammers. Next, if someone stole your phone number and used it to drain your bank accounts or access other sensitive platforms, you expect to hold your carrier accountable. But here's the shocking truth. You can't sue them. Instead, they force you into arbitration. That's a process that feels more like a game rigged in favor of the carriers than a fair shot at justice. Most mobile carriers, including T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T, include mandatory arbitration clauses in their terms of service. These clauses state that if a dispute arises, like a SIM swap fraud, you must resolve it through arbitration rather than going to court. And there's a few issues people have with this arbitration thing. Arbitration stacks the deck against you. It's a private process, meaning it lacks the transparency of a courtroom. The arbitrator's decision is final, and appealing it is nearly impossible. Carriers are repeat players in arbitration, meaning they regularly work with arbitrators, creating potential bias in their favor. And it's time-consuming and emotionally draining too. Arbitration isn't a quick fix. Victims often survive months of waiting for a resolution, all while dealing with the emotional stress and financial losses. Imagine trying to recover from losing $250,000, yet being told, we'll get to your case when we can. For many, the process drags on far too long. While some arbitration cases result in the carrier covering legal fees, victims often need to hire attorneys and experts up front, and those are additional expenses that not everyone can afford. Here's a few examples of how arbitration has worked in the past. A T-Mobile customer fell victim to a SIM swap scam and lost nearly $1 million. After enduring a drawn-out arbitration process, they were finally awarded $995,000, covering compensatory expenses. While this outcome may seem like a win, think about the months of stress, financial uncertainty, and legal wrangling the victim had to go through to win. In another case, a victim lost about $300,000 in crypto due to a SIM swap. Although the arbitrator awarded damages and attorney fees, the process required significant time and money and emotional effort to navigate. And here's the lesson. Even when victims win, it's a battle that many don't have the resources to fight. Now, I know it's scary to think that a scammer could take over your phone number and drain your bank accounts in just a few minutes. But here's the good news. You can protect yourself. Number one, you can enable SIM lock through your carrier. You can think of a SIM lock as a deadbolt for your phone number. Without it, scammers can call your carrier, impersonate you, and then walk away with access to your phone number. But when you enable a SIM lock or a number lock, you add an extra layer of security that makes unauthorized changes nearly impossible. What you can do is contact your phone carrier, whether it's T-Mobile, Verizon, or AT&T, or another provider, and ask them to activate a SIM lock or a number lock on your account. You can set up a PIN or passcode for your account too. This passcode will be required to make changes like transferring your phone number to a new SIM card. And some carriers let you manage these settings through their app or website, so you don't even have to make a call in some cases. And the second thing you want to do is switch to app-based two-factor authentication for your bank accounts. Most of us rely on two-factor authentication to secure our online accounts, but here's the thing, not all two-factor authentication is created equal. If you're using SMS-based 2FA, where a code is sent to your phone number, you could still be vulnerable to SIM swap scams. The problem with SMS-based 2FA is scammers who take over your phone number can intercept those one-time codes and use them to access your accounts. The better option is app-based 2FA. Apps like Google Authenticator or Authy provide a much safer alternative. So instead of relying on your phone number, these apps generate one-time codes directly on your device. To switch, all you have to do is log into your bank's website or app and navigate to the security settings. Then you want to select app-based authentication or an authenticator app. Now, even with app-based authentication, hackers are always coming up with new tricks like SIM swaps, data breaches, and account takeovers. Those are just a few ways that they try to sneak in. That's why I've stuck with Aura Identity Theft Protection for the past 2 years. It's the easiest way to stay ahead of scammers and keep my personal info safe. You get instant alerts the second someone tries to mess with your accounts. You get advanced monitoring that keeps tabs on your social security number, bank accounts, and passwords. You get data breach notifications so you can lock things down before hackers get access to anything. Plus, you really can't put a price on the peace of mind it gives you. And this is huge. Even if scammers hijack your phone number with a SIM swap, Aura's app-based alerts will still notify you. As long as you're connected to Wi-Fi, you'll know what's happening in real time so you can shut the fraud down before it spirals out of control. And here's what I think is the best part. You can try Aura risk-free for 14 days and see for yourself. Just hit the link below to get started for free. Oh, and by the way, I've created a completely free checklist for protecting yourself against identity theft like this. It doesn't just stop at freezing your credit with the big 3 bureaus like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, because for a lot of people, that's not enough. It takes it a step further by uncovering the secret bureaus most people don't even know about, like ChexSystems, LexisNexis, and Innovis. These lesser-known agencies hold critical data that scammers love to exploit, so locking them down is a no-brainer. And inside here, you also find 10 easy step-by-step instructions with clickable links to secure your accounts and block SIM swap scams before they even start. You also learn how to protect your tax records with an IRS PIN and stop payday loans or unauthorized bank accounts from being opened in your name. With this checklist, you'll be able to secure every possible vulnerability and take back full control of your digital life. No hoops to jump through. Just hit the link below one time to get instant access for free. But listen, let's face it, scams like this are showing up everywhere these days. In fact, I recently covered a shocking case where Chase Bank allowed more than 100 complete strangers to become unauthorized users on customers' credit cards without their knowledge. It's a wild story, but more importantly, I'll show you how to spot this kind of fraud before fake cards start arriving at your front door. Chase Bank let more than 100 complete strangers gain authorized user access to customers' credit cards.
Chase Bank allowed dozens of people, dozens, to be added as authorized users to her credit card without her knowledge or approval.
This woman suddenly received a huge stack of mail containing not one or two, but 70 Chase Bank credit cards issued to 70 complete strangers, all on her credit card account.
Imagine if you opened your mailbox and found it overflowing with dozens of letters containing credit cards for random people attached to your account without your approval. You know, the immediate wave of panic and sense of betrayal would be crushing. You'd be thinking, how could Chase let this happen under their watch? This terrifying incident is exactly what happened to two separate people with their Chase credit cards. On top of that, I'll show you why Chase won't ever give us the full details, how this scam could easily target millions of people, and the best way to catch it before a bunch of fake cards end up at your doorstep. Also, don't forget to download my free credit card pre-approval master list. Everybody loves this list because you can easily find over 50 cards that will pre-approve you without a hard credit pull, and some of them even show your starting limit with just a soft pull too. So hit the link below to check it out for yourself. Now, when you add someone as an authorized user on your credit card, you're basically handing them a lot of power over your finances. They can make purchases, get their own card, and even impact your credit score, all without being responsible for paying a dime. And if they misuse it, you could end up with maxed out credit limits, an absolutely tanked credit score, and legal battles that you have to clean up. So a woman in Hayward, California opened her mailbox one day to discover 70 Chase credit cards, each issued to complete strangers, but all connected to her personal account. The sheer confusion must have been overwhelming. Her mind racing, she quickly realized that Chase, the bank she trusted with her finances, had allowed 70 unauthorized users to get into and access her account. The fraud detection systems that were supposed to protect her had completely failed, leaving her wide open to potentially catastrophic financial damage. Now, think about it. How would you feel in her shoes? You know, you'd expect a major red flag to go up immediately, right? How could adding dozens of strangers to one account not set off alarm bells at Chase? When she looked into it, instead of quick action, this customer was met with silence and delay. After reporting the issue, she was left waiting, wondering if she could ever feel secure about her credit card account again. With each passing day, the anxiety grew. Would these strangers start racking up charges? Would her credit score take a huge hit? Would Chase even fix the situation before real damage was done? The woman really felt vulnerable and betrayed and incredibly frustrated. Not only had her financial security been crushed, but the bank she trusted, which was Chase, had failed her. And now, as Chase dragged its feet in responding, she was left to wonder, how could something like this happen in the first place? And why wasn't Chase doing more to make it right? This incident really shows us the risk that even a well-known, respected financial institution can pose if its systems aren't up to the task of protecting its customers. But this was just the first time it happened. And it's really a harsh reality that your financial security is more vulnerable than you might think, especially in today's digital world. That's a big reason why I use Aura Identity Theft Protection. It monitors all 3 credit bureaus and delivers the fastest, really near real-time alerts whenever someone makes an inquiry into your credit files across Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. That way you get instant protection, whether it's a legitimate check or an attempt at an identity theft. And it has bank fraud monitoring, which ensures that you're the first one to know when someone tries to alter your account details or add new names to gain unauthorized access. That means you receive an immediate alert if someone attempts to tamper with your account. When it comes to your future, it has 401k and investment account monitoring, and it keeps your nest egg secure. If any of your registered financial accounts ever show up on the dark web, you'll know about it first. And the feature I use the most is financial transaction monitoring. This tool lets you track every single transaction on your credit cards, bank accounts, and investment accounts all in one place. Imagine having the convenience of seeing your entire financial world at a glance, spotting unusual activity immediately, and catching suspicious charges before they become bigger problems. You can even set the alert to go out when you spend as little as $1, so you get notified about every single transaction. And definitely hit the link below to sign up for a 14-day free trial of Aura and start protecting your money and your credit today. Now moving on, let's say you're on vacation, poolside, soaking up the sun, or exploring new places when you get an email from the post office and it's informed delivery. That's a service that lets you see what mail is headed to your house just electronically. At first, it's routine, probably bills or some promotions. But as you scroll through, you realize something is off. There are 35 cards, all set to arrive at your home, and not a single one has your name on it. The panic hits like a tidal wave. This is exactly what happened to a Chase customer from the Bay Area, California. While she was supposed to be enjoying her vacation, her sense of peace was shattered by the knowledge that 35 strangers had been added to her Chase account without her consent. Imagine the sinking feeling of helplessness as you're miles away from home, realizing that your financial security is suddenly out of your control. By using the post office informed delivery, she caught the problem early, and thankfully that was before those cards could be activated. But even that silver lining didn't erase the anxiety she felt. What it seemed like a vacation hiccup was just the beginning. When she returned home, she discovered it wasn't just Chase. She found fraudulent credit card applications from other banks like Capital One and Citibank waiting in her mail. These were banks she had never dealt with before. The scam wasn't just limited to Chase, it was reaching across multiple financial institutions. What started with just one single unsettling incident had felt like a full-blown identity theft nightmare. With her mailbox absolutely full of fraud, her trust in the banks was broken. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service soon got involved, and they treated this case as a widespread identity fraud scheme. The idea that her personal information had been compromised on such a large scale made her question everything. Like, who had access to her data? How far had the scam even reached? And how long would it take to undo the damage? It's not just about the immediate headache of dealing with unauthorized credit cards. It's the never-ending fear that your information is still out there, ready to be exploited at any moment. She had done everything right though. She caught the scam early, she took quick action, and involved the authorities. But that didn't stop her from feeling exposed and vulnerable long after the mail was sorted and the fraudulent accounts were closed. Now, after both scams, Chase took what seemed like the obvious first step. They closed the unauthorized cards and issued new accounts for the customers. On paper, it might look like they handled the situation, but for the victims, it was far from enough. Imagine being in their shoes, receiving over 100 fraudulent credit cards in total, and then being told, "Don't worry, we've canceled the cards," without any real explanation on how this could have happened in the first place. They must have been so frustrated. Chase, the bank that customers trusted with their financial info, not only allowed this massive breach, but also failed to provide any clarity or solutions for preventing it from happening again. There was no deep dive into what went wrong, no promise that safeguards had been improved, and certainly no apology that felt genuine. Instead, the response felt like a generic fix, like a band-aid on a much bigger problem. And worse yet, the lack of direct communication made it feel like the customers were left to deal with this mess on their own. It wasn't just about closing the cards, it was about regaining trust in a system that was supposed to protect them. And without clear answers, they likely were left thinking, how could they ever feel safe banking with Chase again? At first glance, you might wonder why Chase didn't provide a clear explanation for these massive breaches. After all, if 70 or 35 unauthorized credit cards were added to your account, wouldn't you want to know exactly how it happened and what steps are being taken to prevent it from happening again? Yet Chase remained suspiciously silent, offering only a small acknowledgement that the cards had been closed and accounts reissued. But according to a credit card fraud department employee, this silence is no accident. It's really a calculated move. The employee explained that banks, including Chase, often keep the details of their fraud detection systems under wraps to protect their own interests. Banks are extremely tight-lipped about how their systems work, and there's a reason for that. If they were to disclose too much, it could expose the weaknesses in their defenses, giving scammers an inside look at how to exploit these gaps even further. Now, another bank employee said about this particular situation that there is exactly a 0% chance that any bank would tell her why this slipped through and was allowed to happen, or what is being done to stop it from reoccurring again. Even if they caught the culprit, they wouldn't tell the customer. This lack of communication is stressful for sure. You trust your bank to safeguard your money, your identity, and your credit, and when they fail, the least you would expect is an explanation. But Chase, like many banks, chooses to protect itself first, leaving customers to deal with the fallout on their own. It's just a harsh reminder that while your financial security may feel personal to you, it's just another line item for the bank to manage quietly behind the scenes. And when you really think about a bank like Chase, one of the biggest in the world, you'd expect state-of-the-art security. You trust that the systems that they've built are strong enough to catch even the smallest signs of fraud. But these incidents tell a much different story, a story that leaves you wondering if Chase is truly keeping your financial safety in mind. Both cases where Chase customers had dozens of unauthorized users added to their accounts reveal serious cracks in the bank's fraud detection systems. Think about it. In both instances, large numbers of strangers were linked to these customers' accounts, 70 people in one case and 35 in the other, and not a single alarm was raised. No red flags, no alerts, and no proactive actions from Chase. The fraud detection systems that should have immediately flagged this suspicious activity remain silent, letting the damage grow unchecked. And the real shocking part? These two incidents didn't happen a few weeks or months apart. They happened years apart. And yet, despite the time that passed, Chase didn't seem to improve their systems at all. You would think that after a breach of security like that, the bank would have made noticeable upgrades to prevent something like this from happening again. But no, the same gaps that allowed the first breach were still there when the second one occurred, leaving customers exposed to the exact same risks. It makes you wonder, if Chase couldn't catch this, what else might they be missing? How many customers could be vulnerable to similar breaches because the systems that should protect them are simply not doing their job? For Chase customers, this should be a wake-up call. You can't just rely on banks like Chase to have your back, especially when scams like these show that even big institutions can fall short. That's why you have to take matters into your own hands. This might sound basic, but it's one of the most effective ways to catch suspicious activity before it spirals out of control. You need to be actively scanning your accounts for anything out of the ordinary. That's going to include unfamiliar names being added as authorized users. Just don't wait for a monthly statement to come before you check your accounts. And you'll want to check your accounts weekly, if not daily. That's the reality of staying on top of things in a world where fraud can happen in a matter of minutes. Another thing you can do is use USPS Informed Delivery. This free service might just be the key to catching the fraudulent activity before it even reaches your doorstep. By giving you a daily preview of what's arriving in your mailbox, this informed delivery service lets you stay one step ahead of those scammers. And just like in these incidents, wouldn't you rather catch those fraudulent cards before they hit your mailbox and potentially get stolen? Another thing you can do is set up alerts. Many banks, including Chase, offer customizable account activity alerts, and you should really be using them. These alerts can notify you instantly when something suspicious happens. The best thing about these alerts is that they can give you real-time data about what's happening with your account, so you can take action before it's too late. But listen, sometimes it's not scammers and criminals attacking your account. Sometimes it's your own credit card company. Yeah, the enemy within. And Capital One is one of those companies you need to watch out for, because not too long ago, they were sending out tens of thousands of emails and letters to customers with terrible news saying that your credit limit could be decreased. Customers with perfect payment histories were even receiving these letters. There's a sneaky new AI phone call scam draining bank accounts using voice cloning technology.
My daughter's voice crying and sobbing, saying, "Mom," and I'm like, "Okay, what happened?" She's like, "Mom, these bad men have me. Help me, help me."
I heard our daughter on the phone. Like, it was unmistakably her.
It was his voice. It was absolutely his voice, Carlos. There was no doubt about it. $25,000 is now out of my wife and my retirement savings. Gone.
Fourth time, after I needed more money, RCU said, "This isn't right. It's a scam."
The scam hasn't abated. Since that article came out, I've received 20 to 25 calls throughout the country of people who have been contacted by Barry Goldstein and who had lost money. And they were devastated. I mean, they're emotionally and physically hurt. They almost were calling to get a phone call hug because they were so upset.
If you're not constantly on guard, you could pick up the phone thinking it's your mom, your son, or your daughter pleading for their life and begging for money, only to find out later it was a scammer halfway across the world. This scam is spreading fast across the country, and the numbers prove it. Imposter scams are officially the #1 type of fraud, according to the FTC, meaning more people are falling for them than any other scam out there. And a survey of 7,000 plus people across 7 countries found that 1 in 4 adults has encountered an AI voice scam. 1 in 10 was targeted directly, while 15% knew someone who had been scammed. And here's the worst part, 77% of victims lost money. Once the scammers got them on the hook, their bank accounts got drained. So coming up, you'll see how a corporate attorney, really an expert in fraud, still fell for the scam, how many victims get trapped in a cycle of making a withdrawal after withdrawal until their account hits zero, and how if you fall victim to this scam, you're 100% guaranteed to never see a dime of your money again. And before I forget, I put together a free checklist to help you lock down your identity and keep scammers out for good. It's super easy to follow and packed with quick steps with clickable links to secure your accounts, block payday loan fraud, protect your tax records, and more. Plus, I even included over 10 agencies where you can report scams just like this. And I just created another freebie to help you remove yourself from data broker lists so those shady companies stop selling your personal info. All you have to do is click that link below to grab them for free. First, let's talk about a grandfather who lost $1,000. So Lee Hall's father was enjoying a quiet afternoon when the phone rang. On the other end was a familiar voice, his grandson, Christian, but something was wrong. He sounded terrified. He said something like, "Grandpa, please, I need help. I'm in trouble." His voice was shaky, his words rushed. It was unmistakably Christian. He told his grandfather he was in Mexico on vacation with friends and that he had gotten in a bad situation. He said, "I was drinking. I got into an accident. I need money to fix this." Lee's father had no social media, no email, no online presence whatsoever. So it's astonishing that these scammers even knew that they were connected in the first place. But in that moment, all that mattered was helping his grandson. And that's when the real manipulation began. Scammers don't want you thinking, just reacting. Lee's father asked questions, and Christian's voice responded instantly, naturally, just like in a real conversation. It felt so real that doubt never even entered his mind. The scammer instructed his father to send $1,000 through a wire transfer service. Lee's father rushed to the bank and sent the money that day. And just like that, his money was gone. Hours later, Christian's mother called his real number, and he answered just like usual. He said, "Hey, Mom, what's up?" She said, "Christian, where are you?" And he said, "Mom, I'm in Dallas. What's going on?" Her heart was pounding, I'm sure. She turned to her husband and said, "We've been scammed." So the terrifying call, the desperate plea for help, it was all fake. Next, Anthony lost $25,000. Anthony was going about his day when his phone rang. This time the voice on the other end was his son. But yet again, something was terribly wrong, wouldn't you know? Who he thought was his son said, "Dad, I had a horrible accident. I hit a pregnant woman. She's in the ICU." Anthony's heart was racing. The fear in his son's voice was clear. The panic, the desperation, it all felt too real. Then the call abruptly ended. Seconds later, another call came in. A man introduced himself as Michael Roberts, an attorney representing his son. He said, "Your son's in jail. He needs $9,200 for bail immediately. If we don't act fast, he'll be in there for 45 days. So now Anthony was in full panic mode. His son's voice was still echoing in his head. He tried calling his son back, but it went straight to voicemail. That sealed it. He must really be in jail. So Anthony rushed to the bank. He told them he needed money for a solar panel installation to avoid suspicion. They approved the withdrawal. Back home, his daughter called the lawyer for further instructions. Lawyer said, "Don't worry, an Uber will be there any minute to pick up the money." And when you know it, right on cue, a car pulled up. Surveillance footage even showed Anthony's daughter handing a manila envelope to the driver. And just like that again, $9,200 was gone. Now, minutes after that first handoff, the phone rang again. This time, it was a different lawyer, Mark Cohen. This time he said the worst happened. The pregnant woman died. Anthony's stomach dropped at that point. Then he said the bail was increased. You now need to send another $15,800. So with his son's future on the line, he did it all over again. Another trip to the bank, another cash withdrawal, another Uber driver picking up that envelope. Now $25,000 flat was gone. Next, hours passed. Anthony and his daughter started researching online. And then she said the words that made his world crash down. She said, "Dad, I hope I'm wrong, but I think you've just been scammed." Anthony grabbed his phone and called his son's real number again. He said, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" His voice was perfectly normal. No accident, no jail, nothing. His son had been safe the entire time. So the voices he had heard, all generated by AI. Then there's Grandma Shirley. She lost $14,000. It was just a quiet, random afternoon when Grandma Shirley's phone rang. The caller ID showed a familiar name. It was her grandson. She was relieved to hear from him. She answered, but obviously something was wrong, right? That's when he said, "Grandma, I'm in trouble. I broke my nose. I have stitches in my mouth." His voice was shaky, pained, and urgent. Shirley's heart sank. Her grandson was hurt. Then came the explanation. He had been in a car accident and was now in jail. But before she could ask questions, another voice took over the call. A man introduced himself as her grandson's lawyer. He said, "Ma'am, your grandson was in a terrible accident. He hit another car. A pregnant woman was involved." Shirley could barely process the information before he laid out the stakes. If she paid $9,000 in cash, the charges would be dropped. But if she didn't, her grandson would face a long and difficult legal battle. The money had to be delivered in cash immediately. For Shirley, her only thought was saving her grandson. So she rushed to the bank, withdrew $9,000 in cash, and then followed the instructions. Her Ring camera captured the moment she handed the envelope to a man in a baseball cap. Then she waited for news about her grandson's release. And wouldn't you know it, Shirley's phone rang again. This time, the lawyer's voice was even more serious. He said, "Ma'am, I have bad news. The pregnant woman's unborn baby has died." Shirley broke down and became hysterical. She was now terrified not just for her grandson, but for what might happen next. He said, "The charges are now much more serious. We need another $5,000 to keep him out of prison." So, still shaken, she paid again. So another cash withdrawal and another handoff. Now $14,000 was completely gone. And just like the earlier stories, Grandma Shirley picked up the phone and called her grandson. Her grandson picked up and he was completely fine. In that instant, humiliation and shame washed over her. She had been fooled from the start. So the scam isn't just about money, it's about your worst nightmare coming true. It plays on your deepest fears of your loved ones being in danger. This scam is more like psychological warfare. Even if you don't send a single dollar, the emotional damage is real. You know, just imagine the sheer panic of thinking your child has been kidnapped. That kind of fear sticks with you. And the only way to protect yourself is knowing how it works before it happens to you. So the first step that these scammers take is targeting who they want to prey on. The scam isn't just random. Scammers specifically target people who are most likely to believe the lie. And older adults are the #1 victims, especially those with children or grandchildren. They often have retirement savings scammers can drain. They may not be tech savvy, making them less familiar with AI scams. They tend to be more trusting and quick to help loved ones in distress. And a lot of them are grandparents. Many of them are used to receiving surprise calls from family members. And scammers exploit their natural instinct to protect their grandkids. And the idea that AI could be used to fake voices, that's unbelievable to most older adults. Even if a grandparent has no social media, their children or grandchildren might be making it easier for scammers to link family connections. And then step 2, scammers steal a voice sample. So the scammers don't need much, just a few seconds of someone's voice to create an exact copy. And they can get it through social media because that's a gold mine. You got TikTok and Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, any platform really where your loved one has spoken. Even voicemail recordings can be used. All they need is a 3-second clip, but if they find more, the AI generated voice becomes even better. And then step 3, the AI generates a voice clone instantly. And this isn't some futuristic technology, it's happening right now. They can use AI tools like 11 Labs, Resemble AI, and deepfake voice generators that can create an exact replica of one's voice. And the clone voice matches tone, emotion, and inflection perfectly. They can even generate a real-time conversation. So no more need for pre-recorded messages. The scammer can now talk back and forth like a real person, responding to questions, adding emotion, and convincing you it's really them. And then step 4, the urgent high-stakes call. The scam always starts with panic. Sometimes late at night or early in the morning, your phone rings, you answer half asleep and unprepared, and then the voice on the other end is going to be your child or your grandchild or your spouse. They say something like, "Mom, I'm in trouble. I need your help." And they sound terrified and desperate. You can hear the fear in their voices. And then they have that usual story that unfolds. For men, the story is going to be like, "I was in a car accident and I injured someone. I need money to settle this now." But for women, it's going to be more like, I've been kidnapped. They're going to hurt me if you don't send money. And then step 5 is they're going to give you a second call because they want to go in for more money. So once the victim sends money one time, the scammer knows they'll likely send more. All they do is add a new twist to increase fear. The victim, already emotionally invested, feels trapped into paying more money. And then there's step 6, which is the payment scam. And that's going to be how they tell you to send the money. So scammers only use payment methods that can't be reversed. They'll never ask for a regular bank transfer or a credit card because those can be disputed. Instead, they demand for cash drop-offs and couriers. So the scammer is going to send an Uber driver to pick up the money, and the victim hands it over in cash, thinking it's for bail or ransom. Another one they like is a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency ATM. They'll direct you to use that ATM to withdraw the money. And once it's converted into crypto, it goes offshore and it's gone forever. They like the wire transfers because after a couple of days, the money is irreversible. And they definitely like prepaid gift cards like Amazon, Apple, and Google Play. They tell you to buy multiple high-value gift cards. And so once you read the codes off over the phone, they will sell or launder that money instantly. And I got to tell you, banks do not offer refunds on the money lost in these AI voice scams. You might think, but this clearly is fraud. The person on the other end was a scammer. Well, it doesn't matter. In the bank's eyes, you willingly sent the money over. And once that cash is gone, it's gone forever. I personally haven't seen a single victim get their money back in this case. And listen, if anyone should have been able to outsmart this scam, it was Gary, who was a corporate attorney. Yet even with his legal knowledge, he was completely powerless. Gary got a frantic call from someone who sounded exactly like his son. He said, "Dad, I'm in jail with a broken nose. I was in an accident. I had a pregnant woman. She's in the ICU." The scammer tried to rush him into sending thousands of dollars using fear and urgency to cloud his judgment. Later, after his real son called and proved he was fine, Gary realized it was all fake. But instead of staying silent, he decided to fight back. Then he reported it to law enforcement, and when no one took action, he even testified on Capitol Hill in front of the Senate to expose how this scam ruins lives. And during his testimony, Gary shared his experience with lawmakers, warning them about the growing threat of AI voice scams. And that's when he revealed that after he went public, 25 people reached out to him, all victims of the same scam. These weren't just people who lost money, they were emotionally shattered. He said they are emotionally and physically hurt. They almost were calling to get a phone call hug because they were so upset. And that's when Gary realized this scam isn't just stealing money, it's breaking people down. So if you want to protect yourself from these sort of AI voice scams, you got to recognize the red flags that someone is using AI to scam you. One thing you want to look out for is the caller sounds exactly like a loved one, but something feels off. Their voice may have unnatural pauses or strange audio glitches. Maybe they pressure you to act fast and keep it secret. They'll say something like, "Don't call mom," or "You have to send money now." Those are huge red flags. Real emergencies don't require total secrecy. And if they say they don't want you to hang up, maybe they insist that you stay on the phone the entire time, preventing you from verifying the situation. Or they may ask you for money in untraceable ways like wire transfers, gift cards, crypto, or cash drop-offs. That's going to be a scam for sure. Real bail payments or medical bills don't demand those methods of payment. So if you want to stop AI voice scammers before they get you, you want to hang up and call the actual person back. Scammers can't intercept a direct call to your real family member. If the number is spoofed, your callback will go to the real person's voicemail or ring through normally. You could even text your loved one while keeping the scammer on the phone. And so if they respond, you'll know it's fake. Another thing you can do is check their location. So verify their phone location via Find My iPhone or iOS or Google location sharing on Android. If you can verify that they're at work or home at school, then it's a scam. Another thing I've heard people talk about is creating a family safe word. What you can do is pick a secret code word only your family knows. So if someone calls claiming to be in trouble but doesn't know the code, it's a scam. What you can do is keep it something uncommon but memorable, like blue elephant or grandma's lasagna. Now here's what I like, which is asking a trick question, which I think is even better than a safe word. What you can do is throw in a personal memory only the real person would know. Like, tell me what I said last time we spoke or saw each other. Maybe even, what's mom or dad's middle name? What's our dog's name? What's your special nickname for me? When is my birthday? What's the name of the restaurant we ate at last time we were together? If they hesitate or get it wrong, you've caught the scam. And you can also limit your voice exposure online. So be mindful about posting videos, podcasts, or voicemail recordings publicly. Scammers scrape social media for voice samples and link them to family members. Another thing you can do is set your social accounts to private so only trusted friends can see your content. And if your account is public, never ever post exact travel plans or current locations. Scammers are actively searching for people who are far away from family to make their fake story seem more convincing. And I gotta say, this scam is becoming harder to avoid because so many people have content creator aspirations and post their voices online daily. But a few smart habits can really keep you from being the next victim. Now, what can you do if you do become a victim? If you're watching this, you're in a terrible situation, and I won't sugarcoat it. Most of these steps won't get your money back, but they're still worth trying. At the very least, you can make noise, file reports, and help expose the scam. So you can contact your bank immediately, see if you can get your money back. You can file a police report just to help substantiate and give more evidence to your claim. And then you can report it to the federal authorities like the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center or IC3. You can report it to the FTC in their fraud department. And you can even still report to the CFPB in their complaint center. Now, I know a lot of people are saying the CFPB is completely shut down. That's not technically true, but it's barely functioning. So as of March 10th of 2025, the CFPB is still open, but its enforcement power has been gutted. The new administration has halted most of the activities, laid off staff, and slowed consumer complaint processing by 80%. You can still file a complaint, but with a drastically reduced team and ongoing disruptions, so don't expect much action, if any. Many enforcement cases have already been dropped, and compensation funds for past violations are stuck in limbo. So for now, the CFPB is still standing, but it's a shell of what it used to be. But I wish I could say this was the only scam that you need to watch out for. Unfortunately, that's just not true. Listen, scammers are out here working overtime, coming up with new ways to drain people's accounts every single month. That's exactly why I put together a playlist with all the biggest bank scams that you need to know about. We're talking about sneaky phone scams and shady credit card tricks, and even scams that banks won't warn you about. This $20 ATM scam is stealing debit cards and wiping out bank accounts in minutes.
Altogether, they got $5,980.
My money is gone and I had just gotten paid. You know, and I'm a teacher. I don't make a lot of money.
I mean, like, I'm looking over my shoulder everywhere I go. It just is horrible.
This has to stop. How many other people is this happening to?
And victims are losing thousands at local grocery stores, and the banks aren't giving their money back. Police are calling it a distraction scam epidemic, and it's happening in broad daylight too. It starts with someone handing you a $20 bill and then saying you dropped it. Now it seems harmless, right? But within minutes, your debit card is compromised and your entire bank account is empty. And banks like Chase are refusing to give the money back to victims. And the worst part is these scammers are now linked to international crime rings operating in multiple states in the US. Check out this first victim who lost almost $6,000 in just minutes. So it happened outside of an Albertsons in Reseda, California. And it was actually a sunny afternoon, just another quick trip to the store for Irvin Nelson, who had no idea he was being watched. As he walked toward his car, a man and a woman approached him holding a $20 bill. "This is yours," the woman said kindly. They said, "I found it on the ground." And they insisted that he must have dropped it. It actually seemed like an honest mistake, something that could have happened to anyone. But what Irvin didn't know was that this was a well-practiced distraction scam, and he had just become their next target. What he didn't notice during the encounter was how closely they were invading his personal space. In the middle of this seemingly generous gesture, they managed to steal his debit card without him ever feeling it. And within minutes, they would use it to wipe out nearly $6,000 from his and his wife's joint bank accounts. And then later that day, Irvin's heart sank because his debit card was missing. So within hours, it took him hours, he actually discovered the horrifying truth. He noticed that $5,980 had been withdrawn from multiple Chase Bank branches using both ATMs and in-person teller transactions. And the scammers were fast. They hit accounts aggressively, knowing that they only had a limited window before the cards were frozen. And you know what? When Irvin and his wife contacted Chase Bank, they expected the bank to, investigate, pull branch security footage and help them recover the stolen funds. But instead, they were met with a cold, generic response. Something like, transactions were processed using the correct PIN number, therefore they are considered authorized. And then Irvin even pointed out that Chase's own policy states that any withdrawal over $5,000 should require a photo ID, especially when done in person at a bank branch. He asked if Chase had reviewed the security footage from the branches where the withdrawals were taking place.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I kept asking them if they've ever looked at the video footage because, in that bank, every inch is covered by a camera.
But you know what? Chase declined to give him the footage unless Irvin got a court subpoena. So no refund, no access to the footage, and no protection for the customer who had just been robbed. Irvin and his wife filed a police report. They followed all the steps they were supposed to, but as of now, they're still out nearly $6,000 with no help from their bank. And then this next victim had $5,000 vanish after a parking lot confrontation. So Sarah had just stopped by her local Ralph's grocery store in Van Nuys, California on April 16th, and she was just running a quick errand like any other day. But what happened that afternoon would leave her and her daughter in financial devastation and expose just how vulnerable even a routine shopping trip can be. So as Sarah approached the checkout line to pay for her groceries, she pulled out her debit card and began entering her PIN number. And that's when a man appeared beside her, uncomfortably close, by the way, and held out a folded $20 bill.
It's your lucky day. You're so lucky. You're full of luck. It's your lucky day.
And Sarah was confused. She hadn't dropped anything, but the man insisted, pushing a $20 bill toward her. She kept refusing, telling him it wasn't hers. But as she tried to finish her transaction, the man moved in closer, so close that he began physically pressing the bill into her wallet, violating her personal space. She said, "You need to back up," and she was disturbed by how aggressively he was forcing the interaction. It felt intrusive and creepy. Now, as she was trying to shake off the uncomfortable encounter, Sarah made her way to her car at this point. But just seconds later, she realized she was being followed. Now the man was joined by a woman this time, and together they confronted Sarah again in the parking lot. They were doubling down on the same pressure, continuing to insist she take the money. She said they kept invading her space, and she said, "I just knew something was off because all I had on me at the time was a couple of dollars." Eventually, Sarah left annoyed but still unaware of what had just happened. As she was driving away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something just was wrong with this moment. She pulled over and checked her wallet, and her debit card was gone. She said, "My heart sank." Within just half an hour, the consequences hit. Multiple large withdrawals had already been made from her Chase account at nearby bank branches. But that wasn't even the end of it, because Sarah's checking account was linked to her daughter Jennifer's, and the thieves drained them both for nearly $5,000 in total. And it was Jennifer, Sarah's daughter, who worked as a school teacher. She said, "My money is gone and I had just gotten paid. I don't make a lot of money, and what I earn goes to what I need, and now we can't even cover that." So she went on to file a police report and shared their story online, hoping to warn others. But what she didn't expect was just how many people would relate. So many people started replying that it happened to them or their mom or their grandma. It was terrifying. And despite reporting the crime to both the police and the bank, Sarah and Jennifer were met with silence. Chase offered no reimbursement, no answers, and no accountability. Their savings were simply gone, and no one was stepping in to help. So with all that being said, let's talk about how this scam actually works. And this isn't just some petty con. The police now say this scam is part of an organized crime ring, likely tied to Romanian theft networks operating inside the US and then funneling that stolen money overseas. Police believe that the group has hit victims across Florida, California, Texas, and a few more states. So here's how it works. Step one, they pick their target inside the store. These scammers don't act randomly, they're actually watching you. They follow victims, typically elderly, into big box stores like grocery chains like Ralph's, Albertsons, Whole Foods, or Publix, and they usually work in pairs, often a man and a woman. One stands behind you in the checkout line, appearing casual and innocent, but really they're watching you punch in your PIN number on the card machine. Then they memorize your 4-digit code without you even realizing it. They don't need your password, they just need your card and that PIN number. And then step two, they follow you into the parking lot. So as you exit the store, that's where really the scam begins. One scammer, usually the man, approaches you with a folded $20 bill, claiming that you dropped it. He'll say something like, hey, you dropped this $20 bill, it's your lucky day. And then while you're distracted and confused, he'll move in close, often trying to physically press the bill into your wallet or your purse. And as you're dealing with him, the second scammer, usually a woman, joins in and adds more pressure to the situation. And victims report that both scammers invade their personal space, making it hard to walk away or think clearly. And then step 3, they go in for that wallet grab or card swap. So the scammers are extremely skilled in sleight of hand. So while you're dealing with the $20 bill distraction, one of them will reach into your purse or wallet, or even swap in your real debit card with a dummy card, or even another card that they've already stolen. In multiple confirmed cases, victims never even felt the card being taken. And police say that in one case caught on surveillance, the scammer reached directly into a woman's open wallet while pretending to help her put the $20 bill away. And then step 4, they hit the bank immediately. So once they have your card and your PIN number, the clock starts ticking from there. So within minutes, they're already at nearby ATMs or bank branches. And in one case, they withdrew nearly $6,000 from a victim's account. And here's something I didn't even know. They may also use bank tellers. I thought this was, just impossible. So shockingly, some banks don't even ask for photo ID, even for large withdrawals. And what most people don't realize is that banks allow different withdrawal limits depending on where you access your money. So like something like a standalone ATM, like those at gas stations or convenience stores, usually have lower limits, often around $200 to $400 a day. But branch-attached ATMs typically allow higher withdrawals, so sometimes up to $1,500 a day. But the highest limits of all come from in-person teller transactions, where scammers can walk away with $5,000 or more in a single visit, especially if no ID is requested and the correct PIN number is entered. And surveillance footage from multiple states shows them hitting up multiple Chase Bank branches in rapid succession, withdrawing as much as they can before the victim even realizes that the card is gone. And then step 5, they blend in and just disappear. So police say that the suspects in these scams often dress in coordinated outfits. So they frequently have thick beards and hats to disguise their appearance and make identification harder. And then they work in teams, each targeting different stores in a single region. They're likely sending the stolen money back to Europe based on their connections to the Romanian theft networks. And one suspect arrested in Florida was linked to crimes in multiple states and had an active criminal history in Europe. Now, you might assume that if someone steals your debit card and then drains your bank account, your bank will rush in to fix it, right? But that's not really how the law works as it stands today. Under federal law, banks are required to protect consumers only in specific cases, and most of these protections fall under Regulation E of the Electronic Fund Transfer Act or Regulation Z of the Truth in Lending Act for credit cards. But here's the loophole. If your debit card was used with the correct PIN number, banks can legally call it an authorized transaction. So even if your card was stolen, you were deceived or tricked, or you didn't even realize the transaction was happening, the bank's logic is simple, but it's brutal. You gave out your PIN number, so you technically authorized the transaction. And that's why wire transfers and PIN-based ATM withdrawals and teller cash outs often are covered, even when they're clearly linked to scams. And here's why it takes so long to get your money back, even if you were scammed. So under Regulation E, banks have up to 10 business days to investigate a fraud claim, and that can be extended to 45 days in some cases. Now, if they can't resolve the claim in 10 days, they can issue a provisional credit, but only if they choose to. And some banks delay assigning a fraud case manager or requesting footage, and that just slows the process even further. So they're not actually violating the law, they're just using the full timeline allowed and most likely to discourage victims from pushing back. So let's talk about how you can actually protect yourself. These scammers are good and they move fast. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're not targeting people who are careless. They're targeting normal, cautious people who are just running errands or picking up groceries. So here's how to stay one step ahead and make sure you're never the next victim. First, you always want to just cover up your PIN number, even if you're at self-checkout. I know it sounds basic, but it could save you thousands. So whether you're at the grocery store or a gas pump, someone could be standing behind you, memorizing your PIN number, just like they did to the victims in these scams. So covering that keypad with your hand every single time should be second nature, and just like wearing a seatbelt. Then don't let anyone get close to you, just anywhere. If someone approaches you with a story or a question, or even you dropped this $20 line, that's your red flag to create some distance immediately. You don't owe strangers your time or attention, so just keep walking and protect your space. These scammers really use kindness and confusion as a weapon, so don't give them a window. And then always check your card after any strange encounter. So let's say that someone got close to you. Maybe they bumped into you. Maybe they handed you something. The moment you create some distance, stop and just check your wallet. Then 1 extra second you take could be the thing that saves your account from being drained before you even make it home. And then you also want to turn alerts on for ATM withdrawals. Most banks actually let you set real-time text or email alerts for large cash withdrawals. So if someone tries to pull out hundreds of dollars, you're going to know instantly. It's a simple layer of protection that can buy you the precious time you need to call your bank and freeze the accounts. And I would say also use tap to pay when you can. Many debit cards now come with NFC or tap to pay functionality, and in most cases, you can skip entering your PIN entirely. That means that no one standing behind you can steal it because you never typed it in. You can actually call up your bank and request them to lower your daily ATM withdrawal limit, and some people set it as low as $300 or $500. That way, even if someone did get your card PIN number, the most they can take is a fraction of your balance. You can also try asking for a high security flag on your account. Now, this is something that you actually have to request manually, but it can be worth it. So you can call your bank and ask them to add this restriction to your profile. It kind of says, no teller withdrawals unless the account holder is physically present with an ID and a verbal password. This is especially important for seniors or anyone who wants peace of mind. You can also use credit cards over debit cards. And here's really the harsh truth. When someone steals money from your debit card, they're stealing your money. But if they steal it from your credit card, they're stealing the bank's money. And trust me, the bank will fight a lot harder to get that money back. Credit cards also come with stronger built-in fraud protections and fewer delays and disputes. A lot of credit card companies will give you the credit back the instant you file a dispute. So if you're able to, use a credit card for everyday purchases and keep your debit card for bank runs or emergencies only. You can also monitor every account down to $1 with Aura. I've been using Aura for over 2 years now, and it's hands down one of the best tools to catch fraud before it spirals out of control. Aura can monitor all of your bank accounts and credit card accounts, not just one card, and it sends real-time alerts for every transaction, even as small as $1. That means if a scammer tries to test your account with a tiny charge before going bigger, you'll know immediately and can shut it down fast. It also gives you credit monitoring, password protection, antivirus, and dark web scans, all in one app. Plus, if anything goes wrong, you get 24/7 US-based fraud support and step-by-step help. You can even try for free for 14 days. Just hit that link below, definitely hit it below, and get you covered. But listen, what if you've already been targeted? So first of all, you just want to take a deep breath, okay? If this happened to you, you're not stupid, you're not alone, and you're definitely not the only one. But now is the time to act fast. So step one, you want to call your bank immediately. The moment you realize your debit card is going or that something feels off, call your bank and report it stolen. Ask them to freeze your account, disable your card, and then flag your account for fraud. And if you're lucky, the scammers haven't drained everything yet, and you might be able to stop more damage from being done. And then step two, you want to file that police report. Even if your bank refuses to help, file that police report anyway. What it does is give you proof of the crime, a record for your case, and something that you can reference if you have to take things even further with your bank or your lawyer. You really don't want to skip this step because it's one of the few ways to start pushing back. And then step three, you want to report to even higher authorities. So here's what most victims don't know yet. There are actually official agencies that track and investigate scams like this, but they rely on people like you to file reports. And by reporting what happened, you're not just speaking up for yourself, you're actually helping build the case against organized fraud rings and pushing for stronger consumer protections nationwide. So here's where you can report. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, or IC3. This is really for organized fraud, stolen debit card data, and crimes that cross state or national lines. You can also report to the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC. This is going to help flag national scam trends and create pressure for broader regulations. You can also report to your state's banking regulator. And so here in North Carolina, where I'm at, it's the Office of Commissioner of Banks. And that's where you can file and complain if your bank mishandled your fraud claim or refused to investigate or just failed to follow proper withdrawal protocols. So if you're not in North Carolina like me, you can just Google your state and the Department of Financial Institutions or Banking Commissioner to find your state's regulator and then file a complaint directly. The more reports that they get, the harder it is for banks and law enforcement to keep ignoring the problem. But I want you to be honest. Do you actually think you would fall for this? You know, in both of these stories, the scammers had to do two things. They had to watch the victim enter their PIN number over their shoulder, and then they had to get close enough to physically steal their debit card. And in both cases, it worked with very little resistance. So I guess here's the real question. Were these victims just too trusting? Did they let it happen? Or is this something anyone could fall for in the right moment or circumstance? Let me know down below in the comment section. I want to know how you feel about this. Either way, I wish this was all you needed to know to protect yourself from scams, but unfortunately, that's not true. Scammers are out here working overtime, coming up with new ways to drain people's bank accounts, every single month. And that's exactly why I put together a playlist with all the biggest bank scams you need to know about. We're talking sneaky phone scams, shady credit card tricks, and even scams that banks don't want to warn you about. So don't wait until it's too late. This sneaky jury duty phone call scam is draining bank accounts using your trust for the police against you.
It was just kind of overwhelming at the personal stuff and the lengths of the things that they would say.
If I hung up, then it would be failure to comply and I would be arrested on the spot.
The individual was afraid and of course went to a local store and transferred $14,000.
Every single one of these victims thought this would never happen to me, but scammers know exactly how to push your buttons. Fear, urgency, and authority. This should be a wake-up call that no one is too smart, too professional, or too careful to be targeted. And imposter scams are officially the #1 type of fraud, according to the FTC, meaning more people are falling for them than any other scam out there. Out of all the scam tactics out there, good old-fashioned phone calls were the most expensive, costing the average person $1,500 per hit. Yeah, just one call can clean you out. So coming up, you'll see how one scammer was so bold, they had the victim hand over $14,000 right at the sheriff's office parking lot. Yes, the scam went down right in front of the building that is supposed to keep you safe. And you'll see how scammers are emailing fake court documents that look terrifyingly real, and why you can't even trust your caller ID anymore, even if it says Sheriff's Department. Oh, before I forget, I put together a free checklist to help you lock down your identity and keep scammers out for good. It's super easy to follow and packed with quick steps with clickable links to secure your accounts, block payday loans, loan fraud, protect tax records, and more. Plus, I even included over 10 agencies where you can report scams just like this. And I created another freebie to help you remove yourself from data broker lists so those shady companies stop selling your personal info. Just click the link below to grab them both for free. So the first victims were from Raleigh, North Carolina. William and April Hubbard helped save lives for a living. But one faint call from the sheriff's office had them terrified for their licenses, their freedom, and their future. And just like that, they were out of $5,000. So it started with a call from someone claiming to be with the Wake County Sheriff's Office. The voice on the line said April had missed grand jury selection and now had 3 warrants out for her arrest. They even dropped the name of a real judge, Judge Dever, and spoofed the sheriff's office phone number to make it seem legit. But here's where it got personal. Both William and April are nurse anesthetists. Their licenses depend on clean background checks, and in the heat of the moment, the fear of losing everything they worked for had kicked in. So they went on to send $1,500 via Venmo to the scammer. Then came more calls, more threats, more panic. So by the end, they had sent $5,000. When William called back to confirm their supposed meeting with the judge, the number was disconnected. That's when the sinking feeling hit. They had really been scammed. They immediately filed a police report, reached out to law enforcement and the state attorney's general office, and then shared their story publicly with one simple message. If it can happen to us, it can happen to anybody. The next victim was in Columbia County, Georgia. It was Kevin Cassidy. He's a dad with a child in cancer treatment, doing his best to stay up until a scammer took him for $30,000 he couldn't afford to lose. He got a call from someone claiming to be a lieutenant from the Columbia County Sheriff's Office saying he'd missed federal jury duty and there was a warrant out for his arrest. The officer even emailed him a copy of a fake arrest warrant with his name on it. To make things worse, the call came from an Appling, Georgia number and used used the last name of a real sheriff's employee. Then he was told he couldn't hang up the phone because he'd be in non-compliance and arrested immediately. Kevin was already overwhelmed. His child is going through cancer treatment and he's been dealing with his own serious health issues. He's working, providing, and suddenly this nightmare just lands on his plate. So under pressure, he paid the $3,000 in cryptocurrency. When he and his wife finally had a chance to breathe and double check with the real sheriff's office, the truth hit. They'd been scammed. There was no warrant, no missed jury duty, just a cruel scam. Columbia County investigators confirmed it. Scammers were using spoof numbers and impersonating real officers, even ones currently employed. Another victim was from DeKalb County, Georgia. So this one really rocked the entire sheriff's office there. Not just because the scammers were bold, but because they walked away with $14,000. So a middle-aged person received a call from someone claiming to be a deputy, saying they missed jury duty and had to pay up or face immediate arrest. But this scammer wasn't just calling, they were bold. They told the victim to meet them in the actual DeKalb County Sheriff's Office parking lot to hand over money cards. And that's exactly what the victim did. $14,000 gone, paid with prepaid money cards purchased at a local store. And the sheriff, Melody Maddox, later confirmed that the scammers had even used the names of real deputies. They're really targeting the most vulnerable, especially the elderly and immigrants. In fact, the sheriff's own cousin got one of these calls. Thankfully, she called her before sending any money. So by the time law enforcement is notified, it's usually too late. The money's gone, the number is disconnected, and the scammer has disappeared like smoke in the air. And the sheriff in that last story, Maddox, said that we will never, ever call you and ask for money. Not by phone, not by email, not in our parking lot. Ever. And these victims all had one thing in common. They were just doing their best, just trying to follow the law and trying to protect their families, their licenses, their lives. And that's exactly what scammers take advantage of. So here's how the scammers make everyday intelligent people cough up thousands of dollars. They really just weaponize your trust and authority. Most people are conditioned from a young age to obey when law enforcement says something is mandatory, especially when it involves jail, court, or legal obligation like jury duty. By impersonating sheriffs or deputies or court clerks, sometimes even using real names and departments, scammers trigger what's called the authority bias. Your brain automatically thinks this must be legit. I could get in serious trouble. Some victims even reported that the scammer's tone and pacing and vocabulary matched exactly how a real officer or government worker might speak. They really hijack your brain's threat response system. These scams are designed to create a sudden panic. There's a bench warrant out. Officers are en route to you. You need to resolve this now or face arrest. The second you believe you're in legal jeopardy, your brain enters fight or flight mode. That fight or flight response literally shuts down the part of your brain responsible for critical thinking. In that moment, you're not reasoning, you're reacting, and scammers are counting on that. They pull you into fear and isolate you from help. Many victims were told they couldn't hang up the phone or speak to anyone else during the call or they'd be under arrest. That tactic isn't just intimidation, it's deliberate isolation. If you can't call your spouse, your lawyer, or even Google the number, you can't verify anything. The goal is to keep you on the call, locked in a bubble of fear and confusion until the money is sent. And the amounts demanded are often large. I'm talking $3,000, $9,000, $14,000. But when victims hesitate, the scammers like to negotiate. How much can you pay today? Can you at least do $2,000? If you're cooperative, we can reduce the fine. And then the scammers often send PDFs of fake court summons or warrants, online forms to sign paperwork, confirmation codes and badge numbers. They even reference real locations like your local courthouse or detention center, and sometimes even tell you to go there, but still send the money first. Some even spoof the number of your local sheriff's office so your caller ID confirms the scam. And it even works on smart people like professors, nurses, journalists, military veterans. These scams don't work because the targets are gullible. They work because they're human. When someone calls you with credible urgency, threatens your livelihood and sounds official, even the most logical person can fall into compliance mode. Scammers don't need you to believe the whole story. They just need you to panic long enough, enough to send the money. So here's how to never get caught up in this scam in the first place. So you never want to send money to someone who calls out of the blue claiming you're in legal trouble. If the call starts with you missed jury duty and there's a warrant, just hang up. That's not how real law enforcement operates. And you don't want to trust your caller ID. It can be faked. Seriously, a scammer can make their number look like it's coming from your local courthouse or the sheriff's office or even the White House. In one past case that we covered, the caller ID literally said Wake County Sheriff. Spoofing is that easy. And no real court or sheriff's office will ever ask for payment over the phone or demand gift cards and cryptocurrency or Apple Pay. They won't even threaten arrest via phone call or text or email. So if anyone is doing this, it's a scam, period. And you don't want to call back the number that just rang you. That's exactly what the scammers want. And then also you want to warn family, especially your elders. Scammers love to target older adults and immigrants because they're often more trusting or less tech savvy. So listen, if you just send like a warning text to your grandma, that could save them thousands of dollars. So you want to do that first. So let's talk about what to do if you've actually been targeted and you fell for it. First of all, you just want to breathe. If you've already sent money or shared personal info, don't panic. You're not alone. And there are steps you can take right now to fight back. So if you sent money, you want to call your bank or credit card company or payment app like Zelle, Venmo, Apple Pay immediately. They might be able to reverse the charge or flag the transaction. And if you pay with gift cards, you want to contact the issuing company with your receipt, and it's really time critical, so you got to do it fast. Then you want to report the scam. So you want to file a report with the FTC and the FBI with the Internet Crime Complaint Center, or IC3. And IC3 is good, especially if you use crypto or a wire transfer or lost a large amount of money. And then you want to notify your local sheriff's office. So even if you can't recover your money, your report could help someone else avoid becoming the next victim. And remember, getting scammed doesn't mean you're stupid. It means someone tried really hard to take advantage of your trust, your fear, or sense of responsibility. So let's make sure they don't succeed again. But I wish this was all you needed to know to protect yourself from scams. Unfortunately, that's just not true. Scammers are out here working overtime, coming up with new ways to drain people's accounts every single month. That's exactly where I put together a playlist with all the biggest bank scams you need to know about. We're talking sneaky phone scams, shady credit card tricks, and even scams that banks won't warn you about. So don't wait until it's too late. This fast-growing robbery scam is cleaning out bank accounts in seconds without ever stepping inside a bank either. It's called jugging.
Have you heard of jugging?
It's called jugging, a crime trend on the rise across the nation. And
robbery, it's known as bank jugging.
It shows what is called jugging.
And it's snowballing into a nationwide threat.
As a father of two daughters, it concerns me.
I do get scared. Makes me not want to go to the ATM sometimes.
To worry about, and if it's happening at all different times of the day, that's really scary. That's really scary.
Criminals are staking out bank parking lots, ATM locations, and even inside branches, silently waiting, watching, and following victims. In most cases, you don't even realize you've been targeted until it's already too late. And it's not just happening in one or two places anymore. According to law enforcement reports, just in Central Florida, at least 7 confirmed jugging cases have surfaced this year alone. In Maryland, 21 victims were hit in just 1 week, with the FBI tracking over 70 jugging offenses by mid-2024, half of them in just June and July. And then Georgia, the Carolinas, and even Washington, D.C. have all seen surges in this brutal follow-you-home crime. So coming up, you'll see how jugging gangs use lookouts, radios, and even inside bank employees to set you up, the 5 red flags to watch before leaving the bank, and the one change that you can make to your routine to protect yourself from ever becoming the next victim. So what is jugging actually? So first, I want you to imagine walking out of your bank with a thick envelope in your hand of your hard-earned money. You're not flashy. You're just trying to make it to your car and get on with your day. But what you don't realize is someone's already watching you, not from across the room, but from a parking lot or in a car with tinted windows. And they've been waiting for someone just like you. And that's essentially what bank jugging is. At its core, jugging is a coordinated robbery setup where criminals stake out banks and ATMs looking for people who walk out with visible signs of cash, whether it's an envelope, a deposit bag, or even just someone nervously checking over their shoulder. The moment you leave, they follow. Sometimes they wait until you get home too. And other times they strike the second that you stop at a gas station or run into a convenience store. It's fast, it's organized, and it's happening all across the country from big cities to quiet suburbs. And funny enough, jugging isn't some silly law enforcement acronym. It's actually street slang that started in places like Texas and then spread fast as the crime did. And actually, back in the day, jug was used to refer to a stash, like a safe full of cash. So if someone was jugging, it meant that they were on the lookout for someone carrying a stash that they could hit up. And listen, the term has even made its way into rap culture, showing up in songs like Jug Season by the Migos, where it's used to describe hitting a lick or making fast money, usually through shady or risky tactics. And even in the streets, the word's been around for a while, but for most people, it's just now hitting the radar. It's only recently that law enforcement has started recognizing and formally using the term. And some departments had never even heard of the word until last year, and now it's showing up in daily crime briefings. And it's even gotten so bad in places like Texas and Maryland that lawmakers are scrambling to kind of redefine jugging as a felony level offense, with enhanced sentencing just to keep up with how bold and violent it's becoming. So let's talk about how jugging actually works. So what you have to remember is these criminals have a routine, and they've done this before. So first, they park outside a bank or credit union, often in rental cars or vehicles with out-of-state plates. Obviously, the windows are going to be dark and their engines are running. Sometimes it's just one person inside. Other times it's a whole crew. What they do is they watch closely for someone leaving with a cash envelope, a zipper bag, or even, just walking with that "I've got money on me" energy. Then they follow the victim either on foot or by car, and you may go, to the grocery store, grab a smoothie, or even heading home. Doesn't even matter. They're on you. And then when the moment is right, that's when they strike. Maybe they wait for you to run into a store and then smash your window. Maybe they create a distraction. Hey, did you drop this $5 bill? While someone else comes in and then grabs your purse. In more aggressive cases, they confront you directly with weapons drawn, taking your cash and often your documents and your phone, ID, and so much more. This is organized street crime, and it's getting more tech savvy by the day. They have spotters and lookouts. One person may go into the bank and then pretend to be a customer. They watch who's withdrawing large sums of money and then alert their partner waiting outside. Then they have communication tools. Jugging crews use walkie-talkies, group texts, and in some cases, Apple AirTags or other GPS trackers to keep tabs on you once you leave the bank. And in some rare but really scary cases, actual bank employees have tipped off jugging crews when a customer makes a large withdrawal. And they know how to blend in, how to follow without being noticed, and even how to move fast when it comes time to strike. And here's where it gets even worse. Jugging doesn't always stop once you reach your car, okay? In many cases, they follow you all the way home. They wait until you park, until you unlock your front door, and until you've dropped your guard. That's when they make their move. And in one heartbreaking case out of Houston, a single mom who had just cleaned 3 homes that day went to the bank to withdraw $10,000 to buy a new car and celebrate her son's birthday. She stopped by her apartment's leasing office, came back to her car, and everything was gone. I'm talking cash, ID, passport, work permit, insurance cards, iPad, everything. And listen, she wasn't rich. She was just trying to do something good for her family. And in a matter of seconds, it was all ripped away. She even said, "It happened so fast, I thought it was a dream." And this is why awareness, knowing what to do and look for and how to protect yourself is your first and most powerful line of defense. Before we get into the 5 red flags to watch before leaving the bank, please hit the subscribe button to let me know, you want to see more content like this. I can easily make more videos just like this for you, but you have to let me know by hitting the subscribe button down below. All right, so moving on. Let's be real. None of us walk out of the bank thinking, we're going to be followed. It's just not something you plan for. You're probably thinking about your next stop, what's for dinner, or whether you remember to reply to that text. That's exactly what jugging crews are counting on, your guard being down. But with a few smart but intentional moves, you can make yourself a harder target and possibly stop a robbery before it even begins. So here's what you need to start doing every time you hit the bank or ATM. First, you want to hide your cash like your life depends on it. That little white bank envelope, it might as well have a flashing neon sign that says "Easy Target." Don't walk out of the bank waving it around or, stuffing it into a visible pocket. Use a plain bag, a backpack, a tote, a diaper bag, a grocery sack, anything but the bank branded envelope or money pouch. And if you don't have to carry cash, just don't. Wire the money or use mobile payments. Even cashier's checks can be a safer route if you're buying something big. The more visible your cash is, the better. The goal is really just to blend in and just move on. And then number 2, you want to switch it up. If you're always hitting the same branch at the same time every week, that's all someone needs to track your pattern and then plan their move on you. So you want to rotate your branches, go on different days, take someone with you when you can, avoid high traffic times where it's easy for someone to kind of follow you in a crowd. And you know what? You can think of it like this. If you're unpredictable, you're forgettable. And that's exactly what you want to be. And then another thing you can do is use the 3 right turns trick. If you ever get the gut feeling, right, that you're being followed, don't second guess it. What you can do is after leaving the bank, make 3 right turns. If the same car is still behind you, don't drive home. Head to the nearest police station. That should run them off. And if you're on foot, call someone and put them on speaker. I want you to talk loud and let the potential follower behind you know that you're not alone. Both the FBI and some major credit unions give the exact same advice if you ever think you're being followed. And then, of course, you never want to leave cash in your car, not even for 30 seconds. One of the most common and costly mistakes people make is thinking, I'll just run in for 1 minute. That minute is all it takes. They smash your window. They grab your bag and then they're going. Even if you're parked in your driveway, even if you're just grabbing something from inside the store, take the cash with you every time. Yes, it's a hassle, but it's a whole lot better than, losing thousands. And then you want to keep your guard up, before even walking out of the bank, look around the parking lot. Who's parked nearby? Is anyone sitting in the car and not getting out? Check who's coming and going. Does anything feel off? And you want to make eye contact with other people and just have that confident body language that makes you less of a target. And you want to avoid distractions at all costs. Don't walk with your head down, scrolling TikTok on your phone, fumbling with your key fob, or on a call. Every second that you're distracted is a second that they could be getting closer to you. So you want to stay heads up until you're inside your car and then your doors are locked. And then that's when you can check your phone and text your friend or hop on that call. It's really not about being paranoid. It's about being present and then ready for anything to pop off. The goal is simple. You really want to make yourself a bad target, make them move on from you and protect what you've worked hard for. Now, even with every precaution, jugging crews are fast, they're focused, and they're relentless. So if you've been targeted, there's really a clear plan that you can follow to protect your identity and help catch whoever did this. First, you want to get somewhere safe and then call 911. Of course, you want to protect yourself. So if you're in danger, leave the area immediately and do not try to confront or follow them. Then you want to call 911 and then file that whole report. So they'll want your exact location, what was taken from you, their vehicle details like the color, the make, the model, and any license plate digits you got. They also want to know if weapons were used or shown. If you're hurt, definitely request that medical attention that you need right away. And then you want to capture what you can really quick. So if you still have your phone on you and it's clear and you're physically okay, you want to do this next. Take some photos, broken glass, damage to your car, tire marks, the area where it happened. You want to write down every detail you remember, like suspicious people or vehicles you saw earlier, the route you took from the bank, any specific interaction that felt a little off. The sooner you do this, the more useful your memory will be to the police. And speaking of the police, you want to file that police report immediately. Even if they just stole a few $100, you really want to file that. So the report becomes a key link in tracking those crimes, especially if it matches other incidents. It's also required for insurance, identity theft claims, and bank investigations. And along with that report, you want to get that report number and an officer contact info to follow up with them. And then if they took more than just cash, like your ID, your debit card, your checkbook, or your phone, you need to move fast and lock down your identity. You want to freeze or cancel your bank cards immediately. And then you want to visit identity.gov to file that report too. And you think about placing a fraud alert or a credit freeze with all 3 bureaus. That includes Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. This really protects you from fake credit applications or identity theft down the road. But in a situation like this one, having something like Aura would be a complete game changer. I've actually been using Aura for over 2 years now, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's one of the best things that you can have in your back pocket when your identity is at risk. And here's why. And that's because you can call them directly, and a real US-based rep will walk you through exactly what to do step by step. They'll help you freeze your credit report, alert the banks, monitor your info in real time, and even hop on 3-way calls if you need them to. And they won't rush you. They'll stay on the line until you feel completely secure. So it's not just software, it's actually a team that has your back when you're feeling the most vulnerable. Definitely hit the link below if you want to try Aura for free for 2 weeks. Now next, you want to notify your bank or credit union. You want to explain exactly what happened and ask, can they pull the security footage for you from the ATM or teller window? Can they monitor your account for unusual activity? Is any kind of fraud protection or reimbursement allowed? If you have a reason to believe a bank employee tipped someone off, you want to say that too. That really matters. And a lot of people forget this, but you want to speak up. And what I mean by that is, most jugging cases go unsolved until patterns emerge. That means the more details that you share, the better the chances of catching them. So you want to talk to your local Facebook groups and your local news stations. You're not the only one it's happened to, and you won't be the last unless more people know what to look for. And you know what? This is exactly why I'm on a mission to educate millions of people about these scams, these tricks, these tactics, and all the sneaky ways that criminals can drain your bank accounts. I actually put together a playlist with all the biggest bank scams that you need to know about. We're talking about sneaky phone scams, shady credit card tricks, and even scams that banks don't want to warn you about. So don't wait until it's too late. Click the playlist right here now and stay one step ahead of the scammers. Thank you for watching.